Chapter 3271. Alas, fellow immortal you, although this item has the benefits you mentioned, it can only withstand the lightning thunder lightning. However, the thunder amplifying wood can only block the golden thunder of Gingshin. Even the golden thunder of Shinyu is not strong enough to block it. The other types of fire lightning, and earth lightning cannot block it. Instead of bidding for this item, why don't we find a great craftsman to forge a few imperial equipment that can block the heavenly thunder? Who do you think would do such a stupid thing? I've participated in 3 auctions in a row. Fellow immortal, you've already taken out this item the last 2 times, but no one bid for it. Fellow immortal, you should save your time and let us see what kind of surprises you'll bring out next. A voice rang out, seemingly very familiar with the thunder amplification wood. Yu Linfeng smiled and said, "This fellow immortal is right. My Zhai Xing Lu naturally knows this as well. However, this lightning thunder lightning is a natural spiritual item of our 3 continents. It is different from those imperial tools that can withstand the heavenly lightning. Although the imperial equipment of a great artifact master was powerful, it was able to block the lightning power and lightning chi of the lightning tribulation. Only a natural spiritual item could block the lightning power and leave the lightning chi behind. If any immortal friend were to rely on this item to pass through the lightning tribulation, the benefits obtained would far surpass that of a normal imperial equipment. My Zhai Xing Lu wants to leave this natural spiritual item for the fellow immortal who needs to withstand the golden lightning. Forget it, it's your Zhai Xing Lu's business anyway. This old man will be patient." That cultivator sighed, clearly too lazy to explain. Golden lightning, wood lightning, fire lightning, and earth lightning. Xiao Hua, who was in the room, was bewildered. Seeing that Yu Linfeng was bluffing again, he turned his head and asked, "Xiao Yi, this old man wants to ask you, other than these wood lightning, fire lightning, and earth lightning, what other heavenly lightning are there?" This. Xiao Yi clenched her teeth, her face a bit red. She smiled and said, "This time, this servant has been tested by Senior. This servant has only heard of heavenly lightning and earthly lightning. That Senior just now seemed to have said heavenly 5 elemental lightning. Shinyu golden lightning should be earthly 5 elemental lightning, heh, not bad." Xiao Hua's face should be even redder than Xiao Yi's. Fortunately, his skin was also thick for 200 years. He only chuckled and looked out of the window again, secretly wondering if he should bid or not. 7 high-grade primal stones, a dim figure behind Yu Linfeng shouted. Yu Linfeng's face lit up. He turned to the cultivator who finally made a bid and smiled. Immortal friend really knows how to do business. This thunder amplification wood has a base price of 8 high-grade origin stones. You're only willing to pay 7. You're really making things difficult for me. This item doesn't have much use for this old man. It's just a preparation. If fellow immortal you doesn't think it's suitable, then forget about it." That person played it down. It sounded like he didn't care about this item at all. Yu Linfeng thought for a moment and said with a smile, "The auction hasn't really started yet, but this rare thunder amplification wood is already breaking the reserve price. I can't make the decision. Fellow immortal, please wait a moment. This old man offers 8 high-grade primal stones." Suddenly, a voice came from the 3rd floor pavilion opposite Xiao Hua. "Fellow immortal you doesn't need to ask for permission." Heh, that's great. This old man thanks Senior." Yu Linfeng was even more happy. He cupped his hands and smiled. Then, he asked the cultivator downstairs, "Fellow immortal, can you increase the price? If you don't, then this item will be this Senior's." That person didn't make a sound. It was unknown whether he was thinking or had already given up. "Oh, is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? If not, then this item will be this Senior's." Yu Linfeng raised his voice. 9 high-grade primal stones. It was still the same voice, but this time, it was filled with helplessness. Xiaohua laughed from upstairs. This guy really wants it. But it seems like he doesn't have too many primal stones in his small Qinquan pouch, so he's playing hard to get. Unfortunately, there's also a rich and overbearing person waiting on the third floor. Damn it, isn't this the legendary waiting for rabbits by a tree stump? 10. Sure enough, the rich and overbearing person on the third floor didn't care at all. At this point, the cultivator who just bid couldn't hide his intentions anymore. He could only follow suit. Not long after, the price of the thunder amplification would reach 40 high-grade primal stones. Boom! All of a sudden, the entire Bright Moon Palace was in an uproar. The previously cold and cheerless atmosphere was swept away by the lack of bids. Everyone understood that no matter if it was the rich and overbearing person upstairs or the person downstairs who made the first bid, both of them were determined to get the thunder amplification wood. After all, this thunder amplification wood's use was very targeted. Since these two people both needed this item, then they both needed this item to resist the golden lightning. Since they had already encountered this item, who would let it go? 40 high-grade primal stones, It was more than 5 times the starting price. It was far beyond everyone's expectations, and even more so, far beyond Yu Lingfeng's expectations. Fellow immortal, do you still want to increase the price? If not, then this item is this senior's. Yu Linfeng shouted excitedly, as if he represented the mood of all the cultivators in the Bright Moon Palace. Senior. The person downstairs stood up and bowed. You're upstairs, Junior is downstairs. Junior knows that I can't compare to Senior's primal stones. In fact, when Senior started bidding, Junior should have tactfully withdrawn. However, Junior urgently needs this item. This item is related to the life of Junior's close relatives. Senior, please be lenient. After the auction, Junior will return to the third floor to pay a visit to Senior. In the future, Junior will remember Senior's name and be deeply grateful to Senior. Fellow immortal, do you still want to bid? Yu Linfeng said sympathetically. I also sympathize with your situation. However, a auction is a auction. Fellow immortal, please bid. Of course, this Senior didn't say it out loud. Perhaps he also has an urgent matter, so he bid like this. There is only one thunder amplification wood here. There must be a place for it to fall. 41. That cultivator raised the price in a low voice. 42. The cultivator upstairs didn't hesitate at all. He immediately added another primal stone, as if he didn't care about the cultivator's words at all. Hee. Xiaohua felt like he was going to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. These two are both cunning old foxes. One is retreating in order to advance. He actually started with 7 primal stones. The other is pressing on step by step, not giving in at all. The cultivator downstairs actually used the life of his close relatives as an excuse. Even I, Xiaohua, have some doubts, not to mention that he really needs this thunder amplification wood. 43. While Xiaohua was pondering, everyone was surprised. The price of the thunder amplification would actually reached 50 primal stones. Of course, contrary to everyone's expectations, this 50 primal stones wasn't called by the person upstairs. Rather, it was the cultivator downstairs who directly increased the price from 46 primal stones to 50 primal stones. It was very obvious that the cultivator downstairs only had 50 high-grade primal stones. After the cultivator downstairs finished calling out 50 primal stones, he said with a somewhat mournful tone, Senior, please understand. This is all I have. Perhaps Senior feels that Junior's reason is somewhat laughable, but Junior has taken out all the primal stones I have on me to show my sincerity. Senior, please forgive me. This was already the second time the cultivator downstairs opened his mouth to beg for mercy. If Xiaohua still had some doubts the first time, this second time, Xiaohua still believed him. He couldn't help but sigh lightly, alas, this poor child. If it was me, I would definitely let him go. Hee, Xiao Yi pursed her lips and laughed from the side. Senior is indeed soft-hearted, just like what I thought. To be able to serve you, this time, I can be considered lucky. However, you're somewhat mistaken. These words I've heard a lot in the Bright Moon Palace. This isn't even considered much. There are even more crafty and scoundrel methods that you haven't seen before. In a while, you can take a look. I'll point them out one by one for you. Alas. Xiaohua understood and slightly shook his head. The wolf is coming, the wolf is coming. If you speak too many lies, who can still distinguish which is a lie and which is the truth? However, this old man still believes that this person only has 50 pieces. Speaking until here, Xiaohua suddenly stared blankly and suddenly had a kind of realization in his heart. What I gave to that Fujiwen, wasn't it just 50 high-grade primordial stones? It can't be so coincidental, this person can't be Fujiwen, right? That's right. Thinking of this, Xiaohua also thought of what Fujiwen said at that time, that he brought his humble wife to thank Xiaohua. Just now, the person that this person spoke of, wasn't that his wife? 60 high-grade primordial stones. The senior on the third floor opposite Xiaohua still spoke indifferently. Obviously, he had the same idea as Xiao Yi. Alas, with a long sigh, the person downstairs said mournfully, "This junior knows that no one will believe what I say, but this is this junior's last chance. This junior still wants to ask senior to be lenient." Rip. With a faint sound like silk tearing, among the many stardust figures, a pale-faced young master in embroidered clothes revealed his true appearance. Ha! Seeing the face of this young master in embroidered clothes, Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. Wasn't this the Fujiwen that he suspected a moment ago? It seems that this Fujiwen's last sentence wasn't said to others, but to himself. He hoped that if he was in this Bright Moon Palace, he could help him. Fellow immortal. Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly and said, "If you want to ask this senior to be lenient, no matter what, you have to add a primordial stone. No matter what you say, this senior can't give you a piece of amplifying thunderwood for free." At this moment, the entire Bright Moon Palace was very noisy. Almost everyone was discussing whether this Fujiwen was speaking the truth or guessing the identity of the senior on the third floor. Almost all of Yu Linfeng's words were suppressed. Looking at Fujiwen's dejected appearance, Yu Linfeng finally opened his mouth and said, "Fellow immortal, I'm very sorry to say this to you, but this is your last chance. If you don't increase the price, this amplifying thunderwood will be this senior's. Fellow immortal Yu, how many primordial stones is my life worth?" Fujiwen raised his head, his face was pale, but his eyes were like stars. Chapter 3272. Yu Linfeng seems to have seen Fujiwen's situation many times. He smiles faintly and says, "Your life is worth countless top-grade primeval stones. My Zhai Xing Lu can't afford it." Senior, look, he's starting to act like a scoundrel. Upstairs, Xiao Yi purses her lips and laughs. Xiaohua doesn't laugh. He asks faintly, "How do I bid?" "Oh. Senior." Xiao Yi is stunned. She looks at Xiaohua in disbelief and says anxiously, "Senior, this is. You tell me how to bid." Xiaohua says in a deep voice. "Oh. Senior, you only need to say the word." Xiao Yi comes back to her senses and says anxiously, "Leave the future matters to me." Alright, at this moment, Yu Linfeng seems to have lost the patience to pretend. He looks at Fujiwen and says, "This thunder-amplifying wood, one top-grade primeval stone." Xiaohua's voice isn't loud, but it's abnormally clear. It's like a huge rock is thrown into a deep pool. However, when the rock enters the water, it's quiet. It seems that everyone has shut up. No one dares to believe their own ears. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Yulin Feng, who has encountered many unforeseen events, is stunned for a moment. Then he says with ecstasy, This senior bids 1 top-grade primeval stone. This is the first item in this auction to bid more than 1 top-grade primeval stone. Boom! At this moment, the shockwave of the huge rock falling into the water raises the heavenly abode. The entire Bright Moon Palace is boiling like never before. A single thunder amplifying wood, after 2 failed bids, this time it appears, it immediately causes such a huge commotion. It's actually bid for 1 top-grade primeval stone. 1 top-grade primeval stone. Xiaohua exchanged so many broken artifacts for only 10 top-grade primeval stones. This thunder-amplifying wood that no one paid attention to before actually bid for 1 top-grade primeval stone. Previously, they thought that 60 top-grade primeval stones was already high enough. However, they didn't think that, there's no higher price, only higher. Because this is a battle between 2 rich and overbearing people on the 3rd floor, and this is only the beginning of their first confrontation. While Bright Moon Palace was seething with excitement, Xiaohua's balcony had instead calmed down, as if there wasn't the intense reaction that everyone had expected. After half a cup of tea's time, when the atmosphere in the entire Bright Moon Palace had calmed down a little, Yulin Feng took a deep breath and slowly flew up. When he was level with Xiaohua and the others, he bowed and said, Seniors, although the thunder-amplifying wood is not bad, our Zhai Xinglu has prepared many good things for you later. If it wasn't necessary for any of the seniors to do so, they wouldn't have bothered to make a fuss over it. This junior asks the 2 seniors to calm down a little. No need. The cultivator opposite Xiaohua said indifferently, This old man will add 10 high-grade primordial stones. 2 top-grade origin stones. Xiaohua was even more aggressive. He didn't allow Yulin Feng to ask him and immediately shouted. Fellow immortal. The cultivator on the other side seemed to be somewhat angry. How could this thunder amplification would be worth 2 top-grade primordial stones? 1 was more than enough. 3 top-grade primordial stones. Xiaohua was usually somewhat stingy, but when it came to a matter of life and death, or when it came to someone pleasing to the eye, he definitely wouldn't be stingy. Seeing that cultivator's voice floating over the Bright Moon Palace, he immediately shouted. 3 top-grade primordial stones. This sentence was more powerful than any rebuttal. The other side immediately stopped talking. This. Happiness came too suddenly. Yulin Feng didn't dare to believe it and smacked his lips. He said with a smile, Since this senior needs the thunder-amplifying wood so much, this item. Wait a moment, the person on the other side hesitated for a moment and said, This junior didn't come here specifically for this thunder-amplifying wood, so the primordial stones in my hands are slightly insufficient. But when I heard about the thunder-amplifying wood, I suddenly remembered that I have a close friend, who should be able to use this item. In a few months, it will be her birthday. This junior wants to give this item as a gift. Fellow immortal, please don't give in. This fellow immortal, this junior's identity, will be revealed to fellow immortal after the auction. This junior will definitely thank you greatly. As for this junior's identity, Star Picking Tower's young master Zhu is very clear. Fellow immortal doesn't need to worry about anything. Hearing this, Xiaohua was amused. Damn it, if I'm not mistaken, this guy is probably that bullshit young master Duanmu, right? Even if he isn't, for a so-called birthday gift, you're fighting over this thunder-amplifying wood with Fujiwen. Look at Fujiwen, he's already said that this thunder-amplifying wood is related to his wife's life. You still won't let it go. Even at this point, you still want this Xiao to show mercy. Not a chance. This Xiao doesn't care if you're young Master Duanmu or not. Today, this Xiao will fight to the death with you. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't speak, that person was overjoyed and said with a smile, "Many thanks, fellow immortal." Cough cough. Yu Linfeng coughed and said with a smile, "Senior hasn't increased the price yet, and this junior will add another top-grade primordial stone." That person suddenly realized and said with some embarrassment. Unfortunately, before Yu Linfeng could speak, Xiaohua said with a smile, "This senior will add 9 top-grade primordial stones." Senior. When the others didn't speak, Xiao Yi hurriedly reminded, "Senior, you can't increase the price anymore." "Why?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "This senior also wants this item." "This?" Xiao Yi said with a smile, "Senior, it's obviously your first time coming to this auction. This junior will tell you the truth, the seniors on the 3rd floor all have some background. If it weren't for the last few most important items, it's rare for them to bid like this. Especially that senior on the other side, he's already stated his purpose. He's just short of revealing his identity. If senior increases the price at the beginning of the auction, then that's shedding all pretense of cordiality. This face could be the face of that country's monarch, a sept, or an aristocratic family. Senior, you must think carefully. And this senior understands." Xiaohua nodded indifferently. Sure enough, the other side was silent and didn't say another word. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be squatting in a corner of the room and drawing circles. "Senior, you've offended that senior." Xiao Yi muttered with a bitter face. Now that things had come to this point, the women who served in the room would most likely be implicated as well. When the city gate is on fire, the fish in the moat will suffer. This had always been an unbreakable principle. If Xiaohua saw that he couldn't afford to offend the cultivator on the other side, he could just say that Xiao Yi didn't warn him and he didn't understand this rule. Wouldn't that be the best way out? Star Plucking Tower or the cultivator on the other side might not be able to do anything to Xiaohua, then where would they get their face from? They could only remedy it from a girl like Xiao Yi. This kind of thing had happened before, and it wasn't like Xiao Yi hadn't seen it before. Her mood was already somewhat bad. Cough cough, since senior has increased the price, this item is senior's. Yu Linfeng coughed a bit. He was naturally willing to bid for the thunder amplification wood at a good price, but such a bidding war also made him tremble with fear. With a wave of Yu Linfeng's hand, that thunder amplification wood slowly flew in front of Xiaohua. "Does senior want to pay the primeval stones first, or do you want to pay after the auction? If you pay now, you can get this thunder amplification wood now." Xiao Yi forced herself to smile and said, "Senior doesn't need to do anything. You just need to tell this junior what to do. And, naturally I have to pay the primeval stones now." Xiaohua said indifferently, "Also, call that scholar downstairs who revealed his face." "Ah." Xiao Yi was stunned. "Senior, are you talking about the young master who bid for this thunder amplification wood just now?" Yes." Xiaohua nodded. He took out the primeval stones from the space and handed them to Xiao Yi, saying, "Just give this thunder amplification wood to him." "No, no way." Xiao Yi cried out in shock as if she had seen a ghost. You actually believe his words? Could it be, you don't believe him?" Xiaohua asked back mercilessly. This junior indeed doesn't believe him." Xiao Yi lowered her head and said, "In this bright moon palace, this junior has seen too much. This junior is unable to distinguish between them. This senior is also unable to distinguish between them." Xiaohua said indifferently, "However, this senior is willing to believe. I'm willing to pay the price of 2 supreme-grade primeval stones. It's 3 supreme-grade primeval stones and 10 high-grade primeval stones." Xiao Yi's heart warmed for no reason. All the fear and guesses from before were swept away. No matter how much this kind of senior evaded the responsibility, it was impossible for him to push the responsibility of offending this senior to her, right? Go. Pay the primeval stones and give this to him. Xiaohua waved his hand, go quickly and come back quickly. This senior still wants to bid for other things. Yes, this junior will do it right away. If you want to bid, you can bid as much as you want. This junior will settle the transaction with the senior after returning. Xiao Yi took the primeval stones and the thunder amplification wood and hurriedly left. Xiao Hua looked below the balcony. Fu Jiwen was looking at him very eagerly. The reason he revealed his true face was to let Xiao Hua see it and let Xiao Hua make a move. Although this method had the intention of taking drastic measures and forcing Xiao Hua could also feel his helplessness when he put himself in Xiao Hua's shoes. Thinking about Xue and the space, thinking about how much primeval stones Fu Jiwen's life was worth, Xiao Hua felt that even if he was deceived, it was worth it. In this world, how many men could say these words? However, Xiao Hua didn't dare to wait until after the auction to give the thunder amplification wood to Fu Jiwen. Xiao Hua's heart was like a mirror, but Fu Jiwen didn't know. He didn't know if this kind of trust would allow Fu Jiwen to persist until the auction ended. If he didn't see Fu Jiwen after the auction, Xiao Hua didn't have Fu Jiwen's message talisman and other things. At that time, Fu Jiwen would be so happy that he went silly. He said that he would invite Xiao Hua to his humble home for a chat and didn't leave any jade eyes. If he didn't see Fu Jiwen, then Xiao Hua's 3 supreme-grade primeval stones would be wasted. Fellow immortals. Yulin Feng, who was in midair, had already landed. He said with a smile, after the fierce battle just now, many of the rare items have already been returned to their owners. Now, this junior will bring fellow immortals to see the rare items in my hidden immortal continents auction this time. Chapter 3273. While speaking, Yulin Feng waved the fan in his hand. Like a butterfly flapping its wings, the fan flickered with a faint brilliance. That brilliance split off and rushed towards the silver-white hidden immortal continent light ball under Yulin Feng's feet. The brilliance was extremely fast, arriving in front of the light ball in a moment. However, just before the brilliance fell into the light ball, it suddenly changed into a complete ray of light. A ray of light as sharp as an awl. Boom! A huge trembling sound rang out. The silver-white brilliance filled the entire bright moon palace. Within the brilliance, a woman wearing a flawless heavenly robe descended from the sky. Her long sleeves, which were like a rainbow, slowly waved. Countless bright specks of light flew out. This woman's face was blurry, but her bright eyes and white teeth were faintly discernible. Everyone's gaze landed on this heavenly maiden. When the brilliance faded, the heavenly maiden's figure disappeared. More than 10 specks of light adorned the light ball as if the heavenly maiden had just placed them there. Xiao Hua's divine sense is powerful, and his Tao foundation is even stronger than others. With just a glance, the charm technique within the brilliance lost its effect on him. Seeing the heavenly maidens dance, Fu Jiwen, who is downstairs, is stunned at first. Then, he seems to have realized something. He turns his head to look and disappears. Xiao Hua smiles. He knows that Xiao Yi called Fu Jiwen out and gave him the thunder amplification wood. His karma can be considered settled. 3 top-grade primeval stones were really insignificant for that bone. Since Xiao Hua had this dilemma in his heart, he couldn't not help but help. Fellow immortals, everyone knows that my hidden immortal continent's cultivation base is Confucian. Yulin Feng opened his mouth again. Speaking of Confucian cultivation, although I'm neither high nor low, I also know that I can't do without the 4 treasures of the study. Whether it's the 8 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, wine, flower, tea, or the 6 arts of etiquette, music, archery, imperial, and mathematics, they all can't be done without ink, paper, and inkstone. Even my 10 great imperial artifacts, What? Before Yu Linfeng finished speaking, a slightly hoarse voice called out. You! Fellow immortal Yu, could it be that you want to bid for the 10 great imperial artifacts today? Cough cough. Yu Linfeng's face was rather awkward. He smiled and said, Fellow immortal, can you listen to what I have to say? What's more, I was only talking about the 4 treasures of the study, not the 10 great imperial artifacts. If you really want to bid for the 10 great imperial equipment, do you think I can stand here? Ha ha, ha ha. That person laughed. Who asked your Zhai Xing Lu to make the fairies so alluring? This old man had just woken up from the beauty of the female immortal when I heard you mention the 10 great imperial equipment. This old man has only heard of them and has never seen them before. How can I not be shocked? Okay, go on, go on. Yu Linfeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He helplessly looked at the silhouette and said, the 4 treasures of the study are necessary for us Confucian cultivators to draw scrolls. At the same time, the 4 treasures of the study can also be used as imperial weapons. Of the 10 great imperial artifacts of our Confucian cultivators, the divine pen is ranked second and is the most famous representative. Of course, my Zhai Xing Lu temporarily doesn't have the opportunity to bid for the 10 great imperial equipment. Because if I see this item, I will use my family's fortune to obtain it. Damn it, why don't you tell me what the 10 great imperial equipment are? The bystanders all laughed and listened to Yu Linfeng's nonsense. However, upstairs, Xiao Hua was scratching his ears and cheeks. At this moment, a light sound came from behind Xiao Hua. Xiao Yi walked back and said in a low voice, Senior, Xiao Hua nodded, indicating that he heard. Senior. Xiao Yi said in a low voice again, that young master is waiting outside to thank Senior. Oh. Xiao Hua smiled and said, didn't this guy keep saying that he wanted to save his family? Why isn't he in a hurry to go back? Could it be that he really is lying to this old man? Reporting to Senior, Xiao Yi smiled and said, this servant has already brought him to the door of Zhai Xing Lu. He has already given the item to his servant. Looking at that old servant's appearance, he has already galloped away. He is not a swindler. Ah. So fast. Xiao Hua stared blankly, then immediately understood. This bright moon palace probably had a special passage that led directly to the door. Moreover, if not for Xiao Yi leading the way, Fu Jiwen would not have been able to come here so easily. Xiao Hua originally did not want to see him. After all, he had a wife waiting for him at home. However, he heard Yu Linfeng's chatter downstairs. He could not keep asking Xiao Yi, so he smiled and said, go, let him in. Oh, also, Miss Xiao Yi, you wait outside first. When this old man is bidding, I will call you in. Yes, Senior. Xiao Yi was somewhat unhappy, but she still walked out obediently. Junior greets Senior. Fu Jiwen walked in, looked around, and hurriedly bowed his head and thanked Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled and did not get up. He waved his hand and said, no need to be so polite. Didn't you take off your mask so that this Xiao could make a move? Now that we are here, we are instead distant? Hee, so it really is fellow Daoist Xiao. All of a sudden, Fu Jiwen relaxed. He looked to the side and said, this is the highest level place in Star Picking Tower. Normally, only Confucian cultivators or disciples of aristocratic families can come here. I have never come here before. You also did not reveal your identity, so how could I dare to be careless? How could I succeed if I did not put on a show? Hee. Xiao Hua smiled and did not intend to say more. Fu Jiwen once again respectfully straightened his robe and bowed, however, I came here this time to thank fellow Daoist. If not for fellow Daoist's help, I would not have been able to obtain this thunder amplification wood. And, since this thunder amplification wood is actually so important, you should hurry back. The matter at your wife's side is the most urgent. Do you not care about this little bit of formality? Xiaohua stood up and solemnly helped Fujiwen up. The old housekeeper has already brought the thunder amplification wood back. This thing, even though the bidding price here is so high, in reality, no one will have any ideas about it. Nothing will happen. Fujiwen smiled and said, if I did not come to see if it was fellow Daoist Xiao, there would always be a knot in my heart, and it would be detrimental to my cultivation. Especially, fellow Daoist Xiao, you are a guest from afar. I have to accompany fellow Daoist no matter what. When the matter in Copper Pillar State is over, I will send fellow Daoist away. It won't be too late for me to return. It can also be considered to be a good host. Just right. You can explain to me a bit about the 10 great imperial artifacts of Confucian cultivators. Xiaohua did not stick to formalities and smiled as he pointed to a chair at the side. Yes. Fellow Daoist Xiao. When Fujiwen heard this, he was also very happy. He pulled a chair and sat next to the windowsill. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he seemed to have thought of something. He hastily put his hand into his bosom, took out a jade eye, and personally handed it to Xiaohua. Just now, this little one left in too much of a hurry. I didn't even leave behind my address. I'm really ashamed. This little one is from the Yu province's Pingshan country. This jade eye contains the address of this little one's residence, and also, some of this little one's cultivation experience. I really don't know how to thank fellow Daoist. The friendship between gentlemen is as light as water. Xiaohua glanced at him, reached out his hand, and carefully took it. He didn't check it, and sent it into his space. He smiled and said, your jade eyes are actually unnecessary. Fellow Daoist took it. Only then can my heart be at ease. Fujiwen finally let out a sigh of relief. He sat down and looked outside the window. He smiled and said, this place is really good. I can see the outside but the outside can't see the inside. At this moment, Yulin Feng, who was in the air, grabbed one of the light spots on the map of hidden immortal continent into his hand. It was a rectangular jade box. The outside of the box was drawn with neat patterns. There were even some characters carved on it. Fellow Daoist Xiao, this jade box is different from the Dao Sect's jade box. Fujiwen said naturally, ordinary Dao Sect's jade box would have talismans attached to it to prevent the aura inside from leaking out and attracting the attention of others. But Confucian cultivators use these characters to suppress the aura inside the jade box. Those patterns also have this effect. In short, there are some similarities between Confucian cultivators and Dao sect cultivators, but in essence, there is a difference between heaven and earth. After Fujiwen finished speaking, Yulin Feng pointed his hand and a stream of true energy rushed out. Buzz. The jade box also emitted a faint buzzing sound. Waves of clear air came from the patterns and characters. Ka-ba, a crisp sound rang out. Roar. Following the crisp sound, the jade box opened and a red fire dragon rushed out of the jade box. A clear dragon roar resounded throughout the bright moon palace. Then, an even brighter crimson color mixed with an indescribable heat slowly floated out of the jade box. Everyone squinted their eyes and saw clearly that it was an ink brush that was over a foot long and as thick as a fist. The ink brush was made of a very strange material. It was completely red, and a horned dragon was engraved on it. The horned dragon was swimming in the light, and the clear dragon roar came from the shadow of the horned dragon. What was even stranger was that the ink pen was only a pen holder. The place where the brush should have been was empty. Fellow Taoists, this is what I was talking about, a copy of the divine brush, Red Dragon Brush. Yulin Feng waved his hand and his true energy fell on the red dragon brush. The dragon-like light gradually fell and the heat was withdrawn into the red dragon brush. This red dragon brush is made from the bones of a fire dragon. The dragon engraved on the surface is also made from the blood essence of a fire dragon. When you use this red dragon brush to draw a scroll or use it as an imperial weapon, you can use the fire dragon's soul to fully display the power of the divine brush. Then Yu Lin Feng gave a simple introduction of the red dragon brush and announced the starting price of the red dragon brush. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't bid for it. He smiled and asked Fujiwen, "This red dragon brush is a copy of the divine brush. If it's so powerful, then what would the real divine brush look like?" Chapter 3274. Fujiwen thought for a moment and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, as the saying goes, a big sound has no sound, a big elephant has no shape, a real treasure is returning to its original state. I have never seen the divine brush before, but I have heard that the divine brush was not made from the tendons and bones of some fire dragon, nor was it made from any other demonic beast. It was made from a type of green bamboo. Only the green bamboo's upright and unbending character could bring out the true noble spirit. What is special is that when the divine pen appears, it always has a faint clear chi. This clear chi can directly rush to the sky and resonate with the literature star in the sky. I heard that when the divine pen is writing the scroll, it can borrow the literature star's literature chi to attract the noble chi of the world." "Good, so powerful. Then this green bamboo is definitely not ordinary." Xiao Hua smacked his lips and said with a smile, "Indeed. It is said that this green bamboo is taken from the Immortal Palace's immortal emperor's favorite green bamboo, and it is personally made by a great artificer who cultivated to the literature saint realm." Immortal Palace. Hearing Empress and Immortal Emperor one after another, Xiao Hua unconsciously muttered in his heart and said in a low voice, "Does young Master Fu know where the Immortal Palace is?" "Hee, how would I know?" Fujiwen shook his head as expected. "Perhaps when I cultivate to the literature saint realm, I will be able to see the mystery of the Immortal Palace." "Oh. Why do you say that?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. Fujiwen said with a smile, "On the hidden immortal continent, all Confucian scholars who can cultivate to the literature saint realm can receive the invitation of Emperor Go Qin and Empress Dongming to participate in the heavenly bestowal banquet. Although the road to the Immortal Palace is specially guided by the Immortal Palace's warriors, the literature saints don't know where the Immortal Palace is. But after all, they can see the wonders of the Immortal Palace." Xiao Hua nodded slightly. "In other words, even if they participate in the heavenly bestowal banquet, it is impossible to know where the Immortal Palace is." "Yes, it should be. Otherwise, this Immortal Palace has existed for who knows how many years, but there is no rumor of the Immortal Palace's location on the hidden Immortal Continent." Fujiwen nodded. "Hee, let's not talk about the Immortal Palace." Xiao Hua did not care about the location of the Immortal Palace. After all, that was the ultimate goal of Confucian cultivation, and it was far from him. "Let's talk about the 10 great imperial equipment." Fujiwen pointed at the falling fire dragon brush and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao already knows about the second-ranked divine brush. The 10th-ranked imperial artifact is the 10,000 transformation scarf. Ever-changing scarf." When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. This myriad of transformations sounds like. Why does it have something to do with my Tao Sex Dharma artifacts? Fujiwen smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, didn't I say it before?" Although Taoism had been in decline for a long time, both Taoism and Confucianism were passed down from ancient times. Both sects had their own advantages and disadvantages, but they could also learn from each other. As for who was whose essence and who was whose fabrication, who would be able to tell? The ever-changing scarf is a Confucian scarf used by a Confucian scholar. Rumor has it that when worn on the head, not only can it change one's appearance at will, but also when reciting poems, the clear air on the head can connect to the stars. Different times can connect to different constellations, and when drawing inscriptions, it can also borrow the power of the constellations. Inscriptions. Xiao Hua heard a new term. Fu Jiwen immediately explained, inscriptions are words that are written with a divine brush and contain an aura of righteousness. When these words are written on paper, the paper becomes a scroll. If it is directly written in the air to counter the enemy, it is called inscriptions. Oh, right, the words carved on the jade box just now can be called inscriptions. These inscriptions should be similar to the Dao sect's runes. Xiao Hua nodded. If that's the case, then I understand. These runes and inscriptions are indeed different methods to achieve the same result. The 9th-ranked imperial equipment is misty-like immortal robe. Fu Jiwen said again, the biggest effect of this imperial equipment is that it can create auspicious clouds in the 9 heavens and dance with the white clouds. It is the fastest flying imperial equipment among the top 10 imperial equipment. It can be considered as a real imperial equipment. Of course, this immortal robe can also become invisible and illusory. Even if it is as strong as the sage of literature, it will not be easy to detect. Good, so to say, who can wear this misty-like immortal robe? In this world, there is almost no one who can defeat him. In this lifetime, even if he can't beat him, he can still escape with his life. It is indeed so. Fu Jiwen laughed and said, speaking of this misty-like immortal robe, there is a wonderful thing. Oh. Quickly tell me about it. Xiao Hua liked strange things the most and withdrew his gaze from the auction. This matter happened in the Pure Land world. Fu Jiwen said tirelessly, the Buddhist sect has always claimed that they are benevolent and pity the world. They even shout out slogans such as sweeping the floor for fear of hurting the lives of ants and cherishing moths. A Confucian scholar in my hidden immortal continent thinks that human nature is evil. How can there be such a benevolent person? Even if there is such a person, it is impossible for the entire Buddhist sect to be like that. Thus, in front of a famous temple in the Pure Land world, a very ferocious and filthy beggar appeared. Every morning, this beggar would come when it was time to give out porridge and would leave after eating the porridge. He would not give these Buddhist sect monks the opportunity to say Zen. At the beginning, the monks of this temple were very obedient and did not get tired of it. Every day, they would chant the name of Buddha and give porridge to this beggar. They would also take advantage of the time when they were giving porridge to explain some Buddhist teachings. Unfortunately, that beggar did not listen at all. This continued for 3 years. The beggars who came to eat porridge left wave after wave. However, this beggar's appearance was the same as before, regardless of rain or shine. The beggar did not change, but the monks who gave porridge began to slack off. From the 4th year onwards, the porridge bowl slowly became half a bowl. Moreover, they no longer taught any Buddhist teachings to this beggar. They only chanted the name of Buddha to deal with him. Since he began to slack off, in the future, it will be even more uncontrollable. Xiao Hua thoughtfully said, this monk who gave porridge is not a senior monk of this temple. I'm afraid that he fell into the beggar's trap. Indeed, before the 6th year, the monk who gave porridge had already begun to speak ill of him. Even when there was no one around, he would drive the beggar away. The so-called Buddhist mercy had long been thrown to the back of his head. Fu Jiwen laughed. The most tragic thing was that one day in the 7th year, the weather seemed to be extremely cold. Except for this beggar, no other beggar went to eat porridge. And the rule of this temple is that as long as someone comes to eat porridge, they must give porridge. I don't know if this monk was in a bad mood, or if it was cold and he did not want to give porridge, or some other reason. In short, this monk actually had a conflict with this beggar when he was giving porridge. He used a porridge spoon to break the beggar's skull, causing his brain to splatter everywhere. Good boy. Xiao Hua laughed. This time, the trouble is really big. Yes, this kind of trouble can really be big or small. Fu Jiwen said in all seriousness, this is also the key to the beggar's test. After all, giving porridge or not, patience or not, are all small things. This life and death is righteousness, whether or not he is a beggar. Alas, this Confucian scholar is really patient. Xiao Hua sighed. He actually spent 6 years of effort to investigate the good and evil of human nature, the hypocrisy of Buddhism. This world is most afraid of this kind of persistent investigation. Fu Jiwen shook his head. If fellow Xiao does not have this kind of persistence, I'm afraid that the road you can walk in the future will not be long. Ha! Young Master Fu is absolutely right. Hearing Fu Jiwen's tone, Xiao Hua unconsciously felt warm in his heart. Although these words are not pleasant to hear, they are really for his own good. Moreover, Xiao Hua also heard that Fu Jiwen should be able to sense his cultivation and feel that his cultivation is still shallow. It's only because he has a lot of primordial stones that he can reach the 3rd floor of Bright Moon Palace. This monk has caused a disaster. The safest way is to directly return to the temple and admit his mistake to the abbot and ask the expert in the temple to perform a ritual for this beggar. No matter what, the abbot will not let this monk pay with his life for this beggar. After all, that place is not my hidden immortal continent. Fu Jiwen said again. Unfortunately, this monk was lucky. Seeing that there was no one around and the wind and snow covered the sky, he boldly dragged this beggar's corpse into the wilderness and threw it down the cliff. Seeing this corpse falling down the mountain stream like a fallen leaf, even if it is a living person, there is no doubt that he will die. Only then did he feel relieved and returned to the temple. Xiao Hua was speechless and said with a bitter smile, "A pitiful person must have a hateful side." Just now, this Xiao felt that this monk was somewhat pitiful. After being stared at for 6 years, who knows how many good deeds he did before this, his moral integrity was destroyed for a moment. But from this monk's actions, not only does he have Buddha in his heart, he also has a devil. This Buddha and devil are the most terrifying. Correct. Exactly. Fu Jiwen nodded and said, actually, this monk also has his own difficulties. It is said that the next day is a big day. A bodhisattva from the great Lane temple will come to their temple to give a lecture. Therefore, the entire temple was moved by this grand event. This monk originally also had something to do, but he could not refuse to give porridge to this beggar, so he had resentment in his heart. Especially, before this grand event, how could he dare to report the matter of him killing the beggar to the abbot's table? He could only quietly cover up this matter. Of course, the weather that day was extremely cold. Other than that beggar who was killed, no one came to eat porridge. Even the entire temple was busy and chaotic. They did not know that a murder had occurred in front of their temple. This day passed by very quietly. That monk who was originally somewhat worried and nervous finally fell asleep. He thought that everything had passed and that everything that he had endured for 6 years had become a passing cloud. However, on the second day, that bodhisattva from the great Lane temple came to the temple. Before he opened the altar to give a lecture, the monks in the temple discovered that the chests of all the Buddha statues in the temple had been broken open, revealing holes in the golden body. On each hole, there was a large flamboyant character. Naturally, the abbot did not dare to be negligent. He thought that this was a conspiracy against the bodhisattva and hurriedly reported it to the bodhisattva. After the bodhisattva heard it, he released his Buddha's consciousness to investigate. After seeing these words, he sighed, the human heart is hard to fathom, human nature is hard to be at peace. Then, without saying another word, he stepped on a lotus and flew away. Chapter 3275. This time, the entire monastery, even the high monks and abbots who heard the news were confused. They didn't know why the bodhisattva left in a huff. When a group of monks gathered the words written in the Buddha's heart together, they formed a nondescript poem. Oh! What poem? Xiao Hua was very interested. Sweeping the floor, afraid of hurting the lives of ants, cherishing moths, covering the lamp with gauze, human life is hard to be heavier than moths, Buddha's heart is lighter than white porridge, if not for the ethereal immortal robe, beggars would have lost their lives in front of Buddha. This time, everyone understood that it was the matter of giving porridge. When the abbot asked the monk who gave the porridge, his face unconsciously turned ashen, and all the monks present were sad. Fujiwen laughed. The specific outcome of the matter was not spread out, but the name Ethereal Immortal Robe was famous in the hidden immortal continent for a while. This ethereal immortal robe was originally not in the top 10 imperial artifacts, but after this matter, it was included in the list. Hee hee. Xiao Hua clapped. It seems that every imperial artifact has a thought-provoking story. However, young Master Fu, do you know? In this world, there are people who give porridge every day for decades. Although he is often hungry, he has never stopped. How is that possible? Fujiwen frowned. Which temple's high monk is this? I hope fellow Daoist Xiao can enlighten me. When I have time, I will pay him a visit. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed. He seemed to be in an extremely good mood. It's not a temple, and it doesn't need a time. It's the old Daoist from the Seven Suns Temple in Bronze Pillar Country. Daoist sect. Fujiwen was somewhat shocked. Xiao Hua looked at the auction downstairs. Under Yu Lingfeng's persuasion, the crimson dragon hair brush had already been sold for a good price, and now he had bid for several rare items from the hidden immortal continent. Looking at Yu Lingfeng's hand grabbing, it seemed like another imperial artifact flew out. Xiao Hua said indifferently, not only does the hidden immortal continent have mystical imperial artifacts, it also has the Daoist sect's loyalty. If young Master Fu has time, you might as well go take a look. You also have Daoist cultivation, this might be useful for your persistence. Indeed. Fujiwen nodded. In my eyes, most of the Daoist sects are deceitful and cunning people. It's rare to see someone as magnanimous as fellow Daoist Xiao, and I've never seen such a tenacious and kind person. After daybreak, I will definitely pay a visit to this senior and seek his advice on cultivation. You will be disappointed. Xiao Hua shook his head. This Daoist priest has no cultivation at all. Fu Jiwen nodded slightly, and a look of admiration appeared on his face. If it weren't for the persistence in your heart, if it weren't for the great kindness in your heart, you wouldn't have been able to persist like this. With such people, the Dao sect can prosper. Yes, I think so too. Only people like Master Dao Shan are the backbone of our Dao sect. Xiao Hua sighed. They are the ones who are supporting our Dao sect when our Dao sect is in decline. Master Dao Shan. I will remember it. Fujiwen nodded. At this moment, Yu Lingfeng's voice rose again. Previously, the bidding for the crimson dragon hair set off a small climax. Then, he bid for some rare items. Although these items couldn't be compared to the crimson dragon hair, they were still very popular. The atmosphere of the entire auction was maintained at a relatively high level. However, following the appearance of a few rare items, the atmosphere began to drop. Yu Linfeng was naturally an expert in this field. He immediately waved his hand, and a ball of extremely tragic brilliance flew out from the ball of light of the hidden immortal continent. It landed in front of him, and he said loudly, "Fellow Daoists, can you guess what this item is? If any of you can guess it, I will make the decision and reduce the amount of primordial stones during the transaction." One of the 10 great imperial artifacts. Just as Yu Lingfeng's voice fell, an old voice sounded. Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly. "Fellow Daoist, you really think too highly of my Zhai Xinglu. Just now, I already said that my Zhai Xinglu has never bid for the 10 great imperial artifacts." Fellow Daoist Yu, at this moment, another voice sounded from the slightly chaotic clamor. "This brilliance looks very strange. It doesn't look like the luster of an imperial artifact, nor does it look like the righteousness of a scroll. But this light is filled with a kind of indescribable brightness. Even my clear eyes technique is unbearable under this brilliance. This really makes me puzzled. If my guess is correct, this isn't a rare item of my hidden immortal continent. No, that's not right. If it isn't a rare item of my hidden immortal continent, how can it be taken out from the ball of light of the hidden immortal continent? Seeing that his goal was achieved, Yu Linfeng didn't dare to let everyone guess anymore. He hurriedly said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, what you said is reasonable. However, you didn't completely guess. This item is naturally something that my hidden immortal continent's Confucian sect uses." Saying this, Yu Linfeng opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of clear air. The clear air landed on the bright ball of light, and it was like a layer of thin clouds covering the ball of light. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the ball of light was actually a block of ink. However, it was just a block of ink that was 2 inches wide and 3 inches long. In addition to the dazzling brilliance, the surface of the ink block was very smooth. Faintly, there were some small lines on the surface. Those lines were slightly fine, and there was a faint scarlet color. Many cultivators with high clear eyes technique could already see that these lines were some blood vessels. However, it was precisely the blood vessels within these lines that emitted a dazzling light that caused the cultivators who were staring at the ink stick to feel waves of dizziness. Amidst this dizziness, another strange demonic beast was revealed. Light. Light beast. A voice cried out, "I understand. This is blood ink refined from the light beast's light blood." Yes. Hearing this, Yu Linfeng clapped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist is right. This blood ink is refined from the extremely rare light beast's blood essence in the Thousand Devils sacred realm. It is most suitable for us Confucian cultivators to make scrolls. Of course, this blood ink can only be used by seniors above the level of literature master. Fellow Taoists below the level of literature master must not try it. In particular, seniors who have reached the level of great grandmaster can use this blood ink to write scrolls that have the power of literature saints." A figure not far from Yu Linfeng cried out in shock, How is it so powerful?" "Ha ha ha, that's not all." Without waiting for this person to finish speaking, another voice called out, "Since this blood ink is mixed with the light beast's blood essence, it doesn't need to be written into a scroll. As long as you hold it in your hand, not only will ordinary demonic beasts not dare to approach you, you can even wander around in the middle of the night. All the evil spirits and ghosts won't dare to approach you. Also..." Across from Xiaohua, another person called out, "With this blood ink on your writing desk, your reading will be like the help of a god. If you practice qi, it will be twice the result with half the effort." Fellow Taoist Yu, what's the starting price for this item? While several people were showing off their knowledge, someone had already asked eagerly. Not only was Yu Linfeng overjoyed, he hastily reported the starting price for this blood ink refined from the light beast's blood essence. On the 3rd floor, Xiaohua smiled and pointed his hand, saying, "Young Master Fu, you just said that the Crimson Dragon hair brush was similar to my Taoist's magic tool talisman brush. Now that this blood ink has appeared, isn't it the same as my Taoist spirit talisman refining? Both use the spirit beast's blood essence and use magic to draw talisman charms." "Hee, that's right." Fu Jiwen said with a smile, "A true scroll doesn't need the help of any spirit beast's blood essence, nor does it need the help of a special imperial tool. That so-called divine brush is nothing more than an accessory. This one has only heard of this kind of scroll, and this kind of inscription can only be written by seniors at the level of literature saints. As for the rest, they are all at a disadvantage. And let them bid. Left and right." "Oh, young Master Fu, if you like something, you can say it. This one only came to take a look, I don't plan on bidding for anything." Xiaohua said with a smile. Fu Jiwen hastily waved his hand and said, "This one's needs have already been met, I have no more requests, there's no need to mention this matter again. Up to you, up to you." Xiaohua smiled, that bone was very useful to him. Xiaohua always felt that a thunder amplifying wood wasn't enough to express his gratitude, so he said this. Fu Jiwen glanced at the enthusiastic bidding, he said with a smile, "Just now, this one was talking about the misty-like immortal robe, the 9th of the 10 great imperial tools. Above the misty-like immortal robe is the myriad miles mountain and rivers fan. Actually, when it comes to this myriad miles mountain and rivers fan, this one feels that rather than calling it a Confucian cultivator's imperial tool, it would be better to call it a Taoist magic tool. Oh. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. This imperial tool is different from other imperial tools. Yes. Fujiwen nodded. It is said that this myriad miles mountain and rivers fan's original form is a Taoist magic tool called the Mountain and Rivers Map. However, this magic tool was damaged during a fight, and it was extremely serious. Taoist magic tools were unable to repair it, so it was abandoned. Later on, a Confucian great tool master obtained this item and used Confucian magic tools to seal a strand of dragon qi from the 9 continents into it, using the dragon qi to nourish the damaged magic tool. After more than 1,000 years, it was completely repaired. When this myriad miles mountain and rivers fan is waved, it has the weight of 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers, and it also has the appearance of a majestic dragon qi. Without great luck and the strength of dragons and elephants, it is extremely difficult to resist. Therefore, it is ranked above the misty-like immortal robe. Luck? Xiaohua frowned and asked, what is luck? What young Master Fu said about the weight of mountains and rivers, the strength of dragons and elephants, this one can understand, but this majestic dragon qi, great luck, this one can't understand. Fujiwen smiled faintly and said, luck is very illusory. If we look at it in a big way, it is the direction of all things in the world. For example, Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, and Taoist sects, whoever can occupy great luck will be able to prosper and develop. In the ancient times, the struggle between Buddhism and Confucianism was a struggle for luck. If Taoist sects' luck was occupied by Buddhism and Confucianism, they would reach a dead end and could only perish and descend into desolation. If we look at it in a big way, it is the development of a country and a family. If a country obtains luck, it will prosper, and the country's strength will be strong. If a family obtains luck, it will flourish, and its descendants will flourish, lasting for thousands of generations. If we look at it in a small way, if a person obtains luck, he will definitely win every bet, and disaster will become auspicious. Chapter 3276. Hiss. Xiaohua slightly inhaled a breath of cold air. Although Fujiwen said it very simply, it was also easy to understand. Doesn't the Tao sect have auspicious talismans? Didn't I also get the Phoenix Jade talisman? It seems like I can inexplicably turn misfortunes into blessings many times. Isn't this what Fujiwen said about luck? Because luck is very complicated, Confucian cultivators even have specialized cultivators to research this technique. Unfortunately, I am very unfamiliar with this. Actually, most people only heard about it from hearsay. It is impossible for them to know the details. Fujiwen said again, moreover, it is said that dragon qi and luck are closely related. On the hidden immortal continent, where there are dragon veins, there will be dragon qi, and where there is dragon qi, the luck will be especially vigorous. Therefore, only people with great luck can resist the dragon qi on the fan of 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers. Hee hee. Hearing this, Xiaohua laughed. If this is true, then wouldn't the dragon kings of the 4 seas become the rulers of the 3 continents? Wouldn't the dragon palaces of the 4 seas become the place with the most abundant luck in this world? Fellow Xiao is wrong. Dragon qi, dragon veins and dragon race are not too related. Dragon veins are born from luck, it is just borrowing the dragon shape, and the dragon race themselves do not have luck. Fujiwen also said with a smile, if it is as fellow Xiao thinks, the place with the most abundant luck is Dragon Island. That dragon palaces of the 4 seas are only part of Dragon Island, suppressing the 4 seas. Dragon Island is the place where the dragon race resides. Speaking of dragon palaces, Xiaohua asked again, Dragon Island is probably the same as the immortal palaces, no one knows where it is. Yes, that is exactly the case. Fu Jiwen nodded, a trace of longing appeared in his eyes. No matter if it is the immortal palaces, Dragon Island, Great Lightning Tune Temple or Great Sage Temple, they are all only heard of but not seen. Let's not talk about this anymore. Xiaohua asked, let's talk about the 10 great imperial equipment. Yes, Fu Jiwen said with a smile, this imperial equipment ranked 7th is a wonderful item, it is called Beauty Jade. Beauty Jade. Xiaohua reached out his hand and scratched his chin a few times, as if he understood. He said with a smile, young Master Fu means, all male cultivators should like it. Ha ha ha, Fu Jiwen said, it is said to be so. But I'm afraid that only the man who actually obtained the beauty jade would know the specific benefits, right? Sweat, this kind of thing can also be called imperial equipment. After Xiaohua seemed to understand, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fu Jiwen explained again, since fellow Daoist Xiao has thought of one of the layers, I'm sure you also understand that when this jade of beauty is used, it can transform into a frightening heavenly maiden. It's extremely easy for people with unstable mental states to fall into the trap. Lust is the first blade. Xiaohua sighs and says, the power of this color is even heavier than the power of dragons and elephants, and even heavier than our mountains and rivers. No wonder this jade beauty is ranked above the fan of mountains and rivers. That's right. There are several times more male cultivators than female cultivators in this world. It's very difficult to escape from this jade beauty. What about the 6th ranked imperial equipment? Xiaohua pursed his lips and smiled. This Xiao is very curious as to which imperial equipment can suppress the beauty jade. To be able to suppress the beauty jade, it's naturally the words that have existed since time immemorial and run through the past and present. It can turn a woman into a skeleton. Fu Jiwen says with a smile, without words, without sentences, without text, those beauties can only be a lump of meat, a skeleton. After 100 years, who can still remember them? Inscriptions. It should be said that the collection of inscriptions and scrolls is completed. Fu Jiwen nods. This imperial equipment is called the 10,000-word book. According to legend, it was written by the earliest 9,999 inscriptions born in the world in ancient times. When the 10,000-word book is used, every word can reach the stars, every word can disturb heaven and earth. It can be said that every word is a gem, every word is heavy, every word is ancient. Under this 10,000-word book, even if the sage of literature can reach the Milky Way, he will still be suppressed by these words. Not even a trace of noble spirit will leak out. 9,999 inscriptions. Xiaohua frowned. Why not 10,000? It is said that when the 10,000th inscription was created, heaven and earth changed colors, gods and devils wept, mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Thus, the last inscription A was merged with heaven and earth, and no one can see it. Of course, if anyone can see this inscription A, their body will immediately become a sage. Hearing this, Xiaohua can't help but secretly curl his lips. Isn't this the soul cultivator's green seal text? Xiaohua clearly knows what the inscription A looks like. Xiaohua is even more clear about the power of the green seal text. In this world, besides the green seal text, how can there be 9,999 inscriptions A with the same power? Isn't this the legendary inscription A? Oh, young Master Fu, please wait a moment. Just as Xiaohua curls his lips and Fu Jiwen is about to speak, Xiaohua suddenly waves his hand and says. Fu Jiwen is stunned, but looking at the auction downstairs, he immediately understands. Just as the two are talking, Yulin Feng has already bid for the blood ink. The one who obtained it is the person who bid for the thunder amplifying wood with Xiaohua. After the blood ink, he bid for a few more rare items. Now, on the lacquer plate in front of Yulin Feng is a jade eye. Yulin Feng is also speaking in a loud voice. Fellow immortals, after bidding for some rare items of the hidden immortal continent, let's take a break for a while. Now, there are a few interesting items. Although they have nothing to do with us Confucian cultivators, if any of you are good at both, you can use a small amount of primeval stones to bid for them. This jade eye in front of me records a Taoist technique called wind and cloud spell. Just as Yulin Feng says this, an impatient person everywhere interrupts him. A cold voice says, "Fellow immortal you, our 3 continents have a law. No one can sell Taoist techniques. What are you doing? Aren't you afraid that Zhai Xinglu will be destroyed by the immortal palace? My Zhai Xinglu has always been enforcing the law. How can we violate the iron law of the 3 continents?" Yulin Feng says with a smile, "In order to contain the great enemy of us Confucian cultivators, the immortal palace prohibits the sale of Taoist techniques. However, it is only limited to low-level and basic techniques. As for high-level techniques, they don't really care. As for fellow immortals, there are people with peerless aptitudes. I'm afraid many of you also have Taoist cultivation, right? My Zhai Xinglu's technique is only a technique between the 3 levels of essence energy. It should be a Taoist golden core technique, but it is not prohibited by the immortal palace." Hearing this, Fu Jiwen looks at the star-shaped Xiaohua and understands something. He knows that Xiaohua wants to bid for this item. Oh my, a Taoist technique of the 3 levels of essence energy. That voice smacks his lips and says, "This thing must cost a lot of primeval stones, right?" "Not much, not much. 1 top-grade primeval stone." Yulin Feng waves his hand and says, "Damn, 1 top-grade primeval stone." That voice seems to want to jump up from below. This is too expensive. How could anyone want it? Yulin Feng shrugs his shoulders and slightly waves the folding fan in his hand. With a calm appearance, he says, "There's no other way, it's a rare item worth hoarding. This is the price. This is a technique. Unlike some imperial tool or scroll, it can be passed down forever. Moreover, in the eyes of fellow immortals, it may be worthless, but in the eyes of others, it may be a priceless treasure. 1 top-grade primeval stone." Without waiting for Yulin Feng to finish speaking, someone not far away called out a price. Oh! Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He looked downstairs. Needless to say, this person must have a Taoist cultivation base. Moreover, he must have already reached the peak of foundation establishment, or even the early Jindan stage. Only then would he come to the auction to bid for this Jindan cultivation method. Good, this fellow immortal bids 1 top-grade primeval stone. Yulin Feng raises his eyebrows and calls out in a slightly exaggerated manner, "Is there anyone else bidding?" I'm afraid 1 top-grade primeval stone is enough to close the deal." Besides Xiaohua, Fu Jiwen says with a smile, "Even fellow Taoist Xiao wouldn't spend a few top-grade primeval stones to compete with a Taoist disciple for this golden core technique, right?" Xiaohua nods, "Indeed. Now that the Taoist sects are in decline, any Taoist cultivator who has some sense of the big picture wouldn't kill each other like this." Sure enough, after this cultivator speaks, although the entire auction is somewhat noisy, no one bids against him. If no one bids, this item will be this fellow immortal's. Yulin Feng raises his folding fan and is about to drop it. Wait. At this moment, the person on the 3rd floor opposite Xiaohua speaks again, "I'll add 10 top-grade primeval stones." Oh. This is... Not only is Xiaohua baffled, even Fu Jiwen raises his eyebrows and looks at the opposite building with some surprise. After all, although the opposite side has only bid twice, the items they bid for each time are completely unrelated to the Taoist sects. One is the thunder amplification wood, the other is the light beast blood ink. How could they bid again for a golden core technique? Could it be a diversion? This person in front of us is also a Daoist cultivator. Xiaohua seems to understand something. His goal is the same as mine, also a Daoist treasure. If so, just now, I was too impetuous. I thought this person was that Duanmu. That's not right. Just as he thinks up to here, Xiaohua seems to have thought of something again, and a trace of a smile hangs at the corner of his mouth. Fuck, just now from that tone, I can only guess with 30% certainty that that person is young Master Duanmu. But now that this guy opened his mouth to bid for this Daoist sex technique, I'm afraid I'm 70% sure that this person is young Master Duanmu. The person who bid for the thunder amplification wood with me just now is really a Daoist cultivator? Fu Jiwen at the side shifts his gaze from outside and looks at Xiaohua. After all, the Daoist sex methods are unique and can use this thunder amplification wood in many places. Would a Daoist sect disciple be very familiar with this star-picking tower's manager? Xiaohua smiles faintly. Fu Jiwen, however, says with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, I'm not too sure about your cultivation, but I reckon you should be the kind of cultivator who secludes himself from the world and only cultivates Daoist sex techniques, not involving yourself in other things." Fellow Daoist also doesn't know, in this hidden immortal continent, no, it should be the 3 continents. Although many cultivators don't dare to say that they are good at both sects, there are often some Confucian cultivators who have Daoist divine abilities and Buddhist sects who have Confucian cultivators' divine abilities. The person bidding may not be a true Daoist sect cultivator, but he may also have Daoist divine abilities. Even if this kind of person has some connection with star-picking tower, it's also normal. Chapter 3277. Xiaohua had already told Fu Jiwen about his situation. Now that he had asked him so many seemingly ordinary things, Fu Jiwen's explanation was also normal. Especially since Fu Jiwen didn't know about his conflict with Duanmu Gongzi, of course he didn't think as much as he did. Let's wait and see. Xiaohua didn't explain and only responded. Downstairs, in this short moment, dozens of high-grade primeval stones had already been added. Finally, the cultivator downstairs helplessly withdrew. Clearly, he was somewhat embarrassed. Good, this wind and cloud art will go to this. Yu Linfeng waved his hand. Just as he was about to settle, Xiaohua raised his voice again, 2 top-grade primeval stones. Boom. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire auction was bustling with activity again. Obviously, the first wave of the thunder amplifying wood was caused by Xiaohua and the person opposite him. Now, this inconspicuous jade eyes had successfully provoked a fight between the two. Add 10 high-grade primeval stones. The voice from the opposite side was extremely fast. It was a bit faster than the previous bid with the cultivator downstairs. And this voice, when heard by Xiaohua's ears, actually carried a kind of relaxed, a kind of excitement. It really is this guy. Xiaohua's eyes slightly narrowed. That's right, since Xiaohua could guess that the person opposite him was Duanmu Gongzi, how could Duanmu Gongzi not guess that it was Xiaohua here? Not to mention that Duanmu Gongzi had already met several distinguished guests on the 3rd floor before entering the balcony, just based on Duanmu Gongzi's words just now. As long as someone paid attention, they would be able to guess that the person on the balcony was Duanmu Gongzi. But Xiaohua still twisted his neck and competed with him. Who else could it be other than Xiaohua? Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that there were other cultivators who urgently needed the thunder-amplifying wood and thus didn't care about Duanmu Gongzi's face. Therefore, Duanmu Gongzi was the same as Xiaohua, bidding with the cultivator downstairs in an uncertain situation. The purpose of this bidding wasn't the wind and cloud art, but Xiaohua's identity. Even the moment Duanmu Gongzi bid for the wind and cloud art, he already denied that Xiaohua was on the balcony and thought that the cultivator downstairs was Xiaohua. Of course, in this way, Duanmu Gongzi won the wind and cloud art and ruined Xiaohua's good thing, so Duanmu Gongzi was also happy. After all, it was only a top-grade primeval stone, Duanmu Gongzi could still afford to waste. Since Xiaohua understood the reason, why didn't he stand up to fight? There had already been conflicts left and right, so what was one more? Naturally, Xiaohua's shout had revealed his identity to young Master Duanmu at the same time. How could young Master Duanmu not be excited? 3 top-grade primordial stones. Xiaohua shouted again without hesitation. Fu Jiwen was greatly alarmed and said anxiously, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, although this cultivation method is rare, but it's really not worth 2 supreme-grade essence stones. Add another 10 upper-grade primordial stones." Young Master Duanmu also opened his mouth. "Forget it." At this moment, Xiaohua smiled and said loudly, "Just now, this old man took advantage of this fellow immortal. This time, even though this old man really desires this jade eye, in order to make up for the injury I inflicted on fellow immortal, I'll give it to fellow immortal. You." Right after Xiaohua finished speaking, a furious roar rose, but it only lasted for a moment before the voice fell silent again. When it spoke again, there was no anger in it. "Then thank you, fellow Daoist." Hearing the word, fellow Daoist, Xiaohua shrugged and said to Fu Jiwen with a smile, "See, you're indeed a fellow Daoist. This Xiao knows his mistake and corrects it. Can this be considered the greatest virtue?" Fu Jiwen naturally couldn't see Xiaohua's expression, but he stood up apologetically and cupped his hands, saying, "Alas, it's all my fault. I caused fellow Daoist Xiao to become enemies with this person." At this point, what did Fu Jiwen not understand? It's just that he thought it was his own matter that made things difficult for Xiaohua. "It has nothing to do with you." Xiaohua waved his hand, indicating for Fu Jiwen to stand up. "If there's no accident, that person should be young Master Duanmu of the Duanmu family. This Xiao doesn't know his name, but when I entered Star Picking Tower, this Xiao inadvertently had an unnecessary conflict with him. Even if this Xiao ignores him, he'll still remember this Xiao in his heart. There's no harm in letting him spend 3 supreme-grade primordial stones to deepen his impression. See Duanmu family." Xiaohua said it casually, but Fu Jiwen gasped. The Duanmu family was truly a colossus to him. "Ignore him." Xiaohua waved his hand, "He also doesn't know who this Xiao is. After tonight, we'll go our separate ways." Fu Jiwen looked at Xiaohua's figure, bit his lips slightly, and said in a low voice, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, the Duanmu family isn't an ordinary family. Even if fellow Daoist has the cultivation of 7th-grade essence energy, I'm afraid you won't be able to confront them head-on." "Oh. 7th-grade essence energy." When Xiaohua heard this, he unconsciously felt a little bitter in his mouth. 7th-grade essence energy was the cultivation of body integration. Given 1,000 years, who knew if Xiaohua could cultivate into body integration? However, Fu Jiwen hesitated again and said, "The descendants of the Duanmu family are also divided into direct and side branches, and even partial branches. Not everyone with the surname Duanmu can't be provoked. To be able to participate in this kind of auction in Bronze Pillar Nation, they shouldn't be from the direct branch of the Duanmu family. Fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't need to be too worried. And this Xiao understands." Xiaohua's voice regained its calmness. He already had a plan in his heart. This Duanmu family was like the Imperial Thunder sect. Although it was very big, but on the other hand, it also had a lot of disciples. This Duanmu young master's cultivation wasn't very high, but there were probably many disciples like him in the Duanmu family. There might not be any top cultivators who would stand up for some small matter for no reason. "You better tell this Xiao what the 5th imperial artifact is." "All right." Fu Jiwen saw that Xiaohua was calm. Although he was a little anxious in his heart, he could only agree and sit down again. He said, "The fifth imperial artifact is the divine devil chess, divine devil chess." When Xiaohua heard this, he frowned again. This? What chess? How did it become one of the top 10 imperial artifacts? Fellow Daoist isn't the only one who is puzzled. Even I and many other cultivators don't understand. Fu Jiwen said absent-mindedly, "It said that the reason why the divine devil chess became one of the top 10 imperial artifacts is because of the mystery of this divine devil chess. No one has ever seen this divine devil chess, and no one knows the use of this divine devil chess. I have only heard that this divine devil chess is a chess set that uses heaven and earth as the chessboard, and gods and devils as the chess pieces." Gods and devils. How is that possible? Xiaohua snorted. He felt that this Confucian student was the best at making up nonsense. Everything that came out of their mouth was impossible. Gods and devils, how could they be chess pieces? If gods and devils were chess pieces, who would be able to control gods and devils? That's right. Fu Jiwen withdrew the trace of worry in his eyes and said with a smile, "That's right. However, I have also heard of some legends that are related to this divine devil chess." Xiaohua looked downstairs. The auction had started again. Yu Linfeng actually took out some Dao sect talisman crafting and alchemy techniques to bid. These talisman crafting and alchemy techniques were obviously more popular than golden core cultivation techniques. Many cultivators began to bid. Of course, the price of these secret techniques was far less than the golden core cultivation techniques. Suddenly, Xiaohua's heart moved, and he secretly said, "Damn it, I forgot. I have now reached the peak of golden core stage. Although I still don't have any signs of condensing a nascent soul, and I don't know how to condense a nascent soul, I should prepare these nascent soul pills and nascent soul birth pills. Now in these 3 continents, Dao sects have declined, and it's hard to say if there are any nascent soul cultivators. Where would there be people who can refine nascent soul pills and nascent soul birth pills for them? I'm afraid I have to refine them myself." It said that only pills refined by pill masters who surpass nascent soul can truly form a nascent soul. However, in terms of cultivation and comprehension of heavenly Tao, my green-robed primordial spirit may not be inferior to a nascent soul cultivator. I wonder if the nascent soul birth pills and nascent soul birth pills he refined are useful. No matter what, I don't have the pill formulas here, and I have to find the pill formulas of these pills in these 3 continents. Alas, it's really difficult. Hee, young Master Fu. Xiaohua's ears perked up, waiting for Yu Linfeng to finish refining the pill formulas. At the same time, he said to Fu Jiwen, "Quickly tell me about the legend." Fu Jiwen cleared his throat, and said with a smile, "This legend is different from Misty-like immortal robe. According to legend, tens of thousands of years ago, there was a flourishing empire on this hidden immortal continent called Dongqin. This Dongqin Empire's territory was vast, and it occupied most of Qing Province and Su Province among the 9 provinces of hidden immortal continent. It was more than 10 times bigger than the second-ranked country. Moreover, this Dongqin Empire's several generations of kings were extremely wise. Under their political and military skills, this Dongqin Empire's people were rich, and the country was prosperous, attracting tens of thousands of countries. However, in the end, an extremely ambitious monarch appeared in the Dongqin Empire. He wanted to be the ruler of the entire hidden immortal continent, so he began to develop his military force and frantically expanded. At the beginning, the Dongqin Empire's expansion was very smooth, and it once reached 3 provinces. However, when the Dongqin Empire attacked a nameless small country in Yan Province, they encountered an unprecedented resistance. Many of the Dongqin Empire's famous generals died in this small country. In the end, the king was enraged and personally led the army to attack. This king was said to have a cultivation of 5th-grade essence force, and he had countless generals under his command. All of them were 3rd or 4th grade essence force cultivators. Under the king's frantic attack, that small country was forced to retreat, and finally reached the end of the line. Just when the Dongqin Empire's king thought that victory was in his hands, he heard a series of earth-shattering roars from thousands of miles away. The originally clear sky was instantly covered with dark clouds, and the entire ground was also covered with black flames. In this drastic change in the sky, a huge chessboard appeared. On the left and right of the chessboard, there were 6 godly generals and 6 demon generals. Each of them had their own responsibilities, and they charged out from the chessboard. Within thousands of miles, all living things were slaughtered by these 12 godly demons. Although the king urgently mobilized all the generals to fight back, how could they be a match for the godly demons? In just half a day's time, Dongqin Empire's 100,000 elite soldiers were all crushed into meat paste. Not a single one of them could escape alive. The most frightening thing was that the nameless small country also had no survivors. Within thousands of miles, all living things were plunged into misery and suffering. Vengeful spirits wandered around freely, and even the demon generals who were born with ghosts could not devour the millions of living things in time. Chapter 3278. After all the living beings were massacred, wind and thunder raged between heaven and earth. Torrential rain poured down, and everything within 10,000 miles became a swamp. However, within this swamp, corpses lay everywhere, and blood flowed everywhere. The stench of blood did not dissipate even after 100 years, and no one could survive in this place. Fu Jiwen spoke eloquently. As for the celestial fiend chest that caused such a calamity, it disappeared without a trace. Where it went, or which expert triggered the celestial fiend chest, no one knows until now. Of course, from this legend, I feel that this celestial fiend chest is a great killing machine. Its activation requires the sacrifice of tens of thousands, or even hundreds of millions of living beings. Unless it's a matter of life and death, no one would easily take it out. That's why it's so mysterious. My goodness. Xiaohua sighed, such a great killing machine. I'm afraid it's ranked first among the 10 great imperial artifacts, right? Why is it only ranked 5th? Fu Jiwen shook his head. This celestial fiend chess is too bloody. Confucian cultivators would never place it first. Actually, Xiaohua laughed again, this legend is too exaggerated, to the point that I feel that it's all made up. Look at that so-called Dongqin Empire, they're crazy and exaggerated. Do those Confucian aristocratic families not care? Although Duanmu aristocratic family is a first-class Confucian aristocratic family, it's not difficult for them to reach out and take care of this matter, right? Secondly, that monarch was actually able to cultivate to the 4th grade of origin power. How long is his lifespan? He's probably tired of being the monarch, right? Thirdly, so many famous generals have fallen in this nameless small country. That monarch, how could he personally go into battle? Furthermore, life is the most important thing. Fourthly, since Dongqin Empire is so powerful, it must have 10 great imperial artifacts, right? Can't the ones ranked first suppress the celestial fiend chess? Ha! Fu Jiwen laughed, fellow Daoist Xiao, don't nitpick too much. This is just a legend, who knows if it's true. However, there's one thing that's true. Oh. It's that 10,000 miles of blood pool, Fu Jiwen said. Today, that blood pool is still uninhabitable, and it's still abnormally bloody. Even birds can't fly over that blood pool. Back then, I even made a trip there. Is that so? Xiaohua asked curiously. That place is in Yan province. Yes, it's celestial fiend blood pool. If there is a chance, this Xiao will personally go and take a look. It was very strange. When Xiaohua heard this very unfamiliar name, a trace of feeling suddenly appeared in his heart. This feeling was indescribable, as if it was a kind of summoning. Oh, that's right. As soon as Xiao Hua felt this, he immediately asked, "The God and Devil blood pool is the place where the God and Devil chest disappeared. Could it be that no one went there to see it?" Xiao, 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 Confucian, Xiao, Xiao, Xiao Hua, Confucian, Yen, Xiao, Yen, Confucian, Confucian, Taoist and then cultivators, fiends, Yen, 1,000 years, and Confucian, Xiao, Conficand and years. Xiao, Yate. Xiao, 8, Yen. Xiao. How dare you? You're going against your ancestors. Just as Xiao Hua sighed and wanted to listen to the stories of the other 10 great imperial equipment, he heard a few angry curses that sounded like rolling thunder coming from downstairs, instantly attracting Xiao Hua and Fu Jiwen's attention. The two of them thought to themselves at the same time, what's going on? At this auction, Yulin Feng had a row of 4 scrolls open in front of him. These scrolls were all rolled up together and tied together with purple threads. In front of him, the so-called rotten scholars that Xiao Hua had just seen walked out of the crowd. They stood under these scrolls and scolded, "Yulin Feng, you are also a disciple of us Confucian cultivators. Your star-plucking tower is also a branch of us Confucian cultivators. How can you be so blinded by primeval stones? The so-called imperial artifacts, the so-called spiritual herbs, the so-called blood ink, you can just bid. Those are only used for cultivation, defense, and attack. But although the calligraphy and paintings of the great scholars of the early years contain an unparalleled noble spirit, they themselves represent the academic achievements of these great scholars. They are the crystallization of their lifetime's knowledge, and can't be compared to those earthly imperial artifacts and scrolls. You're bidding for the painstaking efforts of these great scholars in public. Isn't that a disgrace to culture? Isn't that a disgrace to your ancestors?" Although Yu Lingfeng's expression was somewhat awkward, he still carefully cupped his hands and said, "Seniors. Although these scrolls are the writings of great scholars, they're still scrolls. Our star-picking tower can't just keep these sacred objects in our tower, can we? We have to let these great scholars' knowledge be admired by the younger generation, right? Perhaps our star-picking tower's method is a bit wrong, a bit vulgar, and can't enter your eyes, but it's still our star-picking tower's way of commemorating and valuing these great scholars, right?" "Bullshit." An old man with a bald head and a few strands of white hair under his chin raised his walking stick and swung it at Yulin Feng in midair. He scolded, "I'll beat you to death, you unfilial junior. The calligraphy and paintings of great scholars are elegant objects that can only be admired in a quiet room. Once these elegant objects are here, they're stained with the stench of money. Inside, the noble spirit that all of you are drooling over is also somewhat inferior. Although these calligraphy and paintings have an incomparably pure noble spirit, these are the condensation of the great scholar's essence, qi, and spirit. They're not used for ordinary attacks." Another old man raised his trembling arm and said, "You little bastard. Your words are even better than singing. Who doesn't know that you're using these calligraphy and paintings as scrolls? Using the essence, qi, and spirit of these great scholars to fight for you. When the essence, qi, and spirit of these calligraphy and paintings are gone, these calligraphy and paintings will become trash. What a wastrel. Ha ha ha." Upstairs, Xiao Hua laughed, thinking, "Isn't this the rotten scholar that Xiao Yi mentioned just now, who's here to cause trouble? They treat the scrolls of those great scholars as their heirlooms and don't allow Zhai Xinglu to bid for them. But, is this possible?" Sure enough, Yulin Feng said loudly, "Seniors, if you feel that these calligraphy and paintings are the painstaking efforts of great scholars and can only be admired in a quiet room, then why don't you bid for these calligraphy and paintings? If they're in your hands, won't my Zhai Xinglu be more at ease? Your Zhai Xinglu is blinded by greed. Don't tell me the base price of these calligraphy and paintings are in supreme-grade primordial stones. How can a few poor old men like us afford to bid for them? A few rotten scholars said angrily. Hearing this, Fujiwen also understood. He sighed and said, "What these seniors said is right. The ancient great scholars' handwriting is getting fewer and fewer. I don't know when these will all disappear. Calligraphy and paintings without essence, chi, and spirit, are simply dead objects. It's impossible to show the style of the great scholars of various sects." Xiaohua just stood there and spoke without pain. He waved his hand with a smile. If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Without these ancient great scholars, aren't there still the great scholars of today? There are more and more great scholars in each generation. What's so great about that? Haha, Fujiwen smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Xiao may not know, but the so-called great scholars are also called great scholars. They're not purely from cultivation. They're those who read books and poems, have noble moral character, and are knowledgeable scholars. Those who can be called great scholars, or great scholars, are those who opened a school of thought and have a place in the debate of the 100 schools of thought. How can it be so easy for the later generations to give birth to them? So that's how it is." Xiaohua's face unconsciously changed, and he was filled with respect. He already understood that this so-called great scholar was not a kind of realm as he thought, but a kind of honor, a kind of title. If he forced himself to compare with the people of the Tao sect, then the founder of the Imperial Thunder sect, Taoist Master Qian Yun, was probably this kind of person. Then, the debate of the 100 schools of thought. Xiaohua just said half of this sentence, but he swallowed it back down. He didn't even seem to understand the 10 great imperial artifacts. Now he actually wanted to ask about the debate of the 100 schools of thought. He was afraid that if he let Fujiwen ask them one by one, he wouldn't be able to finish all of them tonight. Let's wait and slowly ask in the future. Xiaohua didn't ask anymore, but at the auction, those rotten scholars became even more aggressive. They practically jumped up and cursed Zhai Xinglu's evil deeds. From the calligraphy and paintings of the great scholars to the cultivation methods of the Confucian school, and even the imperial artifacts of the Confucian school, they all became Zhai Xinglu's crimes of forgetting their ancestors and betraying their ancestors. No matter how Yu Linfeng explained, he was not allowed to bid on these great scholars' calligraphy and paintings. Xiaohua was a bit bored and was just about to ask about the 10 great imperial artifacts when he suddenly became vigilant. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Xiao Yi, what's the matter?" Reporting to Senior, someone sent a visiting card and wants to come and pay a visit to Senior. Xiao Yi's voice came from outside. Xiaohua's eyes turned, and he said with a smile, "Come in first." "Yes, Senior." As Xiao Yi spoke, she walked in with a golden visiting card. Just as she was about to respectfully hand it over, Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Don't be anxious. This old man is just asking, is the owner of this visiting card an honored guest on the 3rd floor?" "Yes, Senior." Xiao Yi nodded and said, "Any honored guest on the 3rd floor of the Bright Moon Palace can pay a visit to each other if they don't want to hide their identity." Just now, this servant not only saw several attendants of the honored guest carrying visiting cards to other pavilions, but also saw 2 honored guests enter other rooms. "Who sent this visiting card? Do you know?" Xiaohua asked again. Xiao Yi shook her head. "This servant doesn't know." The one who sent the visiting card was also Xiao Yi, not that senior's attendant. And, since that's the case, this old man doesn't need to look at this visiting card. Xiaohua said with a flick of his sleeve, "Tell that Xiao Yi exactly what I said." Xiao Yi's expression changed slightly again, and she begged in a low voice, "Senior, you don't need to make things so stiff. Even if you don't want to see that person, you only need to say that you don't want to see him. There's no need to return the visiting card. This kind of face-slapping matter. Senior should consider it more carefully." Chapter 3279. So it's like this. Xiaohua had always believed in the advice of others. He thought for a moment and said, then put down the visiting card. You tell Xiao Yi that this old man has a guest here and it's not convenient for me to see him. Xiao Yi's face lit up with joy. She smiled sweetly at Xiaohua and placed the visiting card on the desk before hurrying out. Fu Jiwen really wanted to know who the guest was. However, this was clearly Xiaohua's private matter. Since Xiaohua didn't intend to open the golden visiting card, Fu Jiwen shifted his gaze away from the golden visiting card and looked at the auction. At this time, the auction was as lively as a marketplace. Although there were no peddlers, the several old men, whose veins were bulging, looked like old beggars who were pointing and gesticulating around a vegetable stall. Where was the elegance in them? Where was the etiquette? It was as if the beauty of their first love was suddenly exposed in front of everyone, and they were trying their best to hide it. However, as Xiaohua watched, he felt somewhat sorrowful in his heart. Yes, the people of the secular world often said that there were only two words in this world, either fame or fortune. Everything else was born for fame and fortune, and if these two words were combined into one, they would become one word, and that would be profit. All the people in the world came for profit, and all the people in the world went for profit. This was exactly the case. Similarly, in the eyes of cultivators, there were also two words, either merit or longevity. All other things were born for this, merit and longevity. This skill was naturally the cultivation level, the realm, and the strength. This longevity was also lifespan, and immortality that cultivators pursued. If these two words were combined into one, it would be longevity. The cultivators in the world had countless methods. Killing and robbing, deceiving each other, and being selfish, wasn't it all for strength? And with strength, wasn't collecting a lot of resources for one's own longevity? It could also be said that everything in the world came for longevity, and everything in the world went for longevity. On the other hand, these seemingly inflexible scholars, although they took advantage of their seniority and pointed fingers at others, what they stubbornly defended, was also the thought in their hearts. This thought was the inheritance of Confucian cultivation, the essence of Confucian cultivation, the true meaning of Confucian cultivation. Perhaps Dao Shan, who doesn't have any cultivation, can be compared to them. Looking at these rotten scholars, Xiaohua couldn't help but think of Dao Shan. When they had just arrived at the Seven Suns Temple tonight, Dao Shan's meticulous etiquette and clean and decent Daoist robes had left a deep impression on Xiaohua. This might be the last pride of these so-called rotten scholars, and also their last struggle. Xiaohua looked at the few old men who were panting and shouting hoarsely as he thought to himself, in the torrent of people who pursue profits, the so-called persistence can only be regarded as pedantic and can only be used as a support. In the eyes of others, the dignity that they try their best to maintain can only be regarded as the performance of actors, which can only make people laugh. Perhaps, such a Confucian cultivator is the hope of Taoism. Thinking of Xiao Yi's mockery of these rotten scholars, Xiaohua understood that the previous inheritance of Confucian cultivation had already declined, and the Daoist cultivation method that they had always ridiculed had gradually appeared. Even if it was only the beginning, it was clear that the essence of Taoism cultivation had already been implanted in the hearts of the new generation of Confucian cultivators. After another half a meal of cultivation, several white-haired rotten scholars collapsed on the ground. After all, they were already old, and their bodies could no longer support their rainbow-like ideals. Several Xiao Yis from the Bright Moon Palace leisurely walked over and offered hot tea and pastries. But, how could these old men use the pastries of the Bright Moon Palace? What was the difference between this and food that was given away? The old man's face was pale, and with a wave of his sleeve, all the pastries and hot water fell to the ground. He stepped on the pastries and slowly staggered away. Looking at these lonely figures, the entire Bright Moon Palace was deathly silent. Other people might not have thought as much as Xiaohua, but these old men's actions that pointed directly at their hearts caused them to naturally feel ashamed in their hearts, an indescribable sense of inferiority. Sigh. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, Fu Jiwen, who was beside him, looked at these old men with an indescribable expression in his eyes. He sighed deeply, and his tone was obviously heavy. Young Master Fu. Xiao Hua asked curiously, could it be, you have other thoughts about these rotten scholars? He, fellow Daoist Xiao also knows about rotten scholars. Fu Jiwen smiled faintly, this humble one not only has some thoughts, but this humble one has also been deeply harmed by them. Deeply harmed by them? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled, can you tell me more about it? I'm really sorry, fellow Daoist Xiao, but this is this humble one's privacy, and it's not good to joke about it. Fu Jiwen shook his head, however, although this humble one says that this humble one has been deeply harmed by them, the root of this harm is still love. It's just that this love is too heavy, too old-fashioned. Xiao Hua looked thoughtfully at Fu Jiwen's complicated expression, then smiled and said, as long as it's love, then it's fine. Whether it's old-fashioned or heavy, it's better than nothing. Moreover, this is love, the most selfless thing in the world. Young Master Fu, treasure it well. Yes, this humble one understands. Fu Jiwen nodded, deep love, deep responsibility, that's exactly how it is. At this point, Fu Jiwen didn't say anything else, and Xiao Hua didn't ask any more questions. He stuck his head out and looked down. At this moment, he was very curious about these 4 scrolls. These were the handwriting of a great scholar who founded a sect. What would they look like? Fellow immortals. At this moment, Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly, my Zhai Xing Lu actually understands these elders' painstaking efforts. These scrolls are indeed the handwriting of an ancient great scholar, and shouldn't be treated as ordinary scrolls to be auctioned. Of course, my Zhai Xing Lu has also taken out these scrolls separately as a sign of respect. Moreover, my Zhai Xing Lu has always been a place for auctions. Since my Zhai Xing Lu has obtained these scrolls, it means that these scrolls can be auctioned. Moreover, our Confucian cultivation is the grandest cultivation method in the world, and we can't stick to the rules. We can only innovate at every moment, and maintain a fresh flow of water. This is the only way to ensure our Confucian cultivation's solid position in the 3 continents. Forget it, this humble one won't say much. Either way, others will be criticized, and this humble one will silently guard my heart. This humble one is currently the host of this auction, so this auction will be a success. Yu Linfeng pointed at the scrolls in front of him again and smiled bitterly. Also, this humble one would like to say that the handwriting in these scrolls, although it's also left behind by a great Confucian cultivator, it's not the great Confucian you all mentioned just now. For example, the scroll on the left has the word law written by the great Confucian of the legalists, Senior Han Qing. Fellow immortals, think about it, if it's really the handwriting of a great Confucian who founded a sect, then, it's a treasure of calligraphy in the world. Not to mention that my Zhai Xing Lu can't afford it, even if we want to bid, we have to save it for last. Ha, fellow immortal you, don't hold back your resentment. A cultivator laughed. The old man's words make sense, and your Zhai Xing Lu's actions are also reasonable. There's no right or wrong in this world. Fellow immortal, why don't you open Senior Han's treasure of calligraphy and take a look? That's right, fellow immortal you, hurry up and open Senior Han's treasure of calligraphy. We can't wait any longer. Many people started shouting, and even more people looked eagerly at the other 3 scrolls. They really wanted to know who the great Confucian handwriting that Zhai Xing Lu had put up for bid belonged to. Everyone, please wait a moment. I still have to inform the officials of the Copper Pillar State. If the great Confucian handwriting is opened, it'll cause too much of a commotion. Yu Linfeng said, gesturing to a corner of the Bright Moon Palace. There, a woman in palace robes hurried over. Fellow Daoist Xiao, upstairs, Fu Jiwen explained to Xiao Hua, the legalists are a branch of Confucian cultivators. Because they believe in using law to rule the country, there's no need to be close or distant, there's no need to be high or low, there's no need to judge by law, they're called the legalists. The famous ancient figures Guanzhong and Zichang were the pioneers of the legalists. Li Kai, Shangyang, Shenbuhai, Shindao, and the others founded the legalists. In the end, Han Fei combined Shangyang's law, Shindao's power, and Shenbuhai's technique to form the culmination of the legalist ideology. Therefore, Han Fei can be considered the great scholar who founded the legalists. He received the honorific title of Zi and is known as Han Fei's Zi. Note, in the future esoteric debate, the third place won't be listed solely for the ancestors. It's in accordance with history. However, everyone must remember that this is just a name. There's no need to take the rest seriously. Apart from Senior Han Fei, Zi, the other representatives of the legalists are Li Si and Shangyang. As for Senior Han Qing, he's a descendant of Senior Han Fei, Zi. As for which generation, I'm not too sure. Apart from the legalists, what other 99 schools are there? Xiaohua finally couldn't help but ask. Fu Jiwen smiled and waved his hand. Fellow Daoist, you misunderstand. The esoteric debate is just a description of the numerous and complex schools of thought. There aren't really 100 schools of thought. To be honest, according to the historical records, there were many schools of thought that hadn't been founded. How could there be only 100? There were more than thousands. Confucianism is actually this prosperous. Xiao Hua was truly amazed. Apart from the legalists, the most famous schools are the Confucians, the Mahists, the militarists, the scholars, the Yin-Yang school, the school of vertical and horizontal, the school of miscellaneous, the school of farmer, the school of fiction, the school of martial arts, and other schools of thought. Fu Jiwen said simply. Even if it's just these simple and famous schools, I'm afraid fellow Daoist Xiao will be confused if I explain them one by one. Why don't you take a look at what scrolls the Bright Moon Palace is selling and I'll slowly explain them to fellow Daoist. Hee, that's great, Xiao Hua nodded. To be honest, when he heard the legalists say something like, don't be too close or distant, don't be too noble or lowly, cut off by law, Xiao Hua felt a headache coming on. He was a genuine Daoist cultivator. Although he had some Confucian foundation, he didn't have the slightest understanding of any theories or poetry. How could he possibly understand? He might as well listen to the stories of the 10 great imperial artifacts. Chapter 3280. Yu Linfeng smiled and raised his hand. Han Cheng's scroll slowly flew to Yu Linfeng's eyes. Yu Linfeng carefully reached out and pinched the purple thread. With a gentle tug, the scroll slowly unfurled. Swoosh! A pure white light shot out from where the scroll was unfurled, as if opening a door under the sun. Buzz! Another sword hum followed the white light. Boom! The light was so dazzling that even someone as strong as Xiao Hua couldn't help but squint. Before he could get used to the light, another muffled thunderous sound rushed out from the scroll like a torrential river, going against the heavens and rushing towards the top of the Bright Moon Palace. See-la-la. With a sound that sounded like it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, the defensive primary formation on top of the Bright Moon Palace was instantly destroyed by the overwhelming gang qi contained within the white light. Not only did the countless sword cries within the Bright Moon Palace resonate, but the overwhelming gang qi also pierced straight into the night sky like a giant sword. Bright Moon Square was a place that didn't sleep. It was brightly lit and people didn't sleep at all. Jiaxinglu was an extremely mysterious place to them. Because those who could come to Bright Moon Square were all rich, but rich people might not be able to go to Jiaxinglu. Even if some people who didn't know the details wanted to take a look at Jiaxinglu, they didn't have any vitality stones or traces of cultivation. It was difficult for them to enter Xinglu. Now, this giant flying sword was like a heavenly soldier rushing into the night sky. Everyone within 10 miles could see it clearly. How could they not be shocked? Inevitably, everyone in the bright moon lane escaped from the nephrite and the fine wine. They stretched their bodies to look at the flying sword and the night sky, gesticulating with their hands and feet. They were abnormally excited as they discussed incessantly. Such a grand occasion was even more beautiful than any fireworks. Although all eyes in Bright Moon Square were focused on Xinglu, although those who hadn't slept yet were also focused on Xinglu, the vast energy that represented righteousness and righteousness couldn't illuminate the night sky. Between the light and darkness, there were still some ghosts that wandered freely in the darkness, undisturbed by the sharpness of the flying sword. This is the sword chi of a sword cultivator. The moment Han Qing opened the scroll, the brilliance was so brilliant that Xiaohua couldn't help but close his eyes. However, even so, the large law character still passed through Xiaohua's eyes and engraved itself into his mind. Every stroke of this law character was in the shape of a flying sword. The entire brilliance rushing into the night sky was also a soaring sword energy. Xiaohua, who was used to seeing sword qi in Dawn Rain Continent, couldn't help but groan. He completely understood in his heart, this sword cultivator is indeed a branch of Confucian cultivator. Moreover, it actually originated from Confucian cultivator's legalism. Alas, there are laws in the mortal world, with punishment as the guiding principle. There are laws in heaven and earth, with the sword as the guiding principle. Isn't the law of heaven and earth swept away by sword energy? Inside the Bright Moon Palace, the sounds of metal clanging could be heard. Some were the cries of swords, and some were the cries of weapons. Even some of the weaker cultivators had their true energy stirred. Whoosh! Yulin Feng shook the scroll in his hand, and the scroll slowly closed up. The sword light that soared into the sky was absorbed into the scroll. Naturally, the sounds of metal clanging within the Bright Moon Palace gradually faded away, and the palace gradually returned to its previous calm. Good heavens, this is merely Senior Han Chang's handwriting, but it already has such a powerful aura. The majestic aura contained in this handwriting can really shock heaven and earth. Even after fellow immortal you put away the scroll, this one still hasn't seen Senior Han's original handwriting. If someone were to hold this scroll, wouldn't it be comparable to an imperial weapon? A shocked voice couldn't help but speak. I just don't know. If it was Senior Han Fizi's original handwriting, what kind of aura would it have? Fellow immortal, what you said is also this one's thoughts. Yu Linfeng's eyes flashed with fervor as he looked at the scroll in front of him. Although this one hasn't seen that kind of heaven-shaking aura, this one heard from the seniors of Star Plucking Tower that if it was Senior Han Fizi's handwriting, this brilliance should be able to penetrate the outer realms and reflect the power of the outer realm stars. No evil in the world can resist this power of starlight. In particular, if it was Senior Han Fizi's handwriting, what broke through just now wasn't my Bright Moon Palace's origin array, but all the restrictions within a radius of 100 li would no longer exist. Damn it. Others didn't say anything, but Xiaohua jumped up first and scolded with a smile. How is that possible? This thing isn't a real spiritual treasure. Without anyone activating it, how can it have such power? Unfortunately, before Xiaohua finished speaking, Fu Jiwen laughed and said, Fellow Daoist Xiao, you're still lacking. What Yu Linfeng said. I'm afraid it's not enough to describe Senior Han Fizi's original handwriting at his peak. According to this one's ancestors, 100,000 years ago, when the demon realm invaded. What? Demon realm invaded? Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This was the first time he heard about the demon realm in the hidden immortal continent. Yes, it's really that time when the demon realm invaded. Fu Jiwen didn't understand Xiaohua's surprise and nodded. That time, Senior Han Fizi's original handwriting revealed its might for the first time. When it was opened, it directly killed 100 demon generals, 100. 100 demon generals. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. He already knew from Zhang Qingshao that the strength of a demon general was comparable to the golden core and nascent soul stage of the Dao sect. This senior Han Fizi's handwriting was actually able to kill 100 nascent soul stage demon generals. Wasn't this too unimaginable? Bragging. Although Xiao Hua didn't refute, it was obvious that he was already secretly criticizing. It's exactly 100 demon generals. Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Daoist, don't think this one is exaggerating. The righteous chi of us Confucian cultivators is the nemesis of the demon realm. Although their physical bodies are incomparably powerful, the demon flames and demon blood they cultivate have no resistance in front of the righteous chi of us Confucian cultivators. Especially when they invaded my hidden immortal continent, in front of the righteous chi that has been settled for hundreds of millions of years, it was like a drop of water falling into a sea of fire. How could it set off a big wave? Oh, this one understands. Xiao Hua nodded. There is righteous chi in heaven and earth. Since ancient times, it has been supporting the justice of the world. As long as there are people, there will be this kind of aura, everlasting. No, what fellow Daoist said is wrong. Fu Jiwen shook his head. There is righteous chi in heaven and earth. This righteous chi has existed since ancient times and does not vary from person to person. Where there are people, there is righteous chi. Where there are no people, there is also righteous chi. It can be said that everything has righteous chi. Even the demon realm also has righteous chi. And this righteous chi is the true chi cultivated by Confucian cultivators. It is not the spiritual chi of heaven and earth cultivated by the Dao sect. Boom. Fu Jiwen's words were like a stone rushing into Xiao Hua's ancient well that had remained motionless for 10,000 years. Xiao Hua instantly became like a clay statue. An indescribable fluctuation emitted from Xiao Hua's body. The stardust that was originally covering his image instantly turned into dust and floated around Xiao Hua. Of course, in just an instant, the starlight and silver light in Xiao Hua's eyes retracted. All the dust fell around Xiao Hua and turned back into stardust. A sudden realization came from Xiao Hua's mouth. So it's like this. This one was wrong. Yes, Xiao Hua was really wrong. His mistake was inconceivable. He had always been cultivating the righteous chi of Confucian cultivators, but what he refined was only the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. How could it be the righteous chi? No wonder he had been cultivating for 100 years and was still unable to condense his core. It turned out that the path he started on was wrong. And his success in refining essence into chi, most of it was because of the core that he passed on to others, right? Fellow Daoist Xiao. Fu Jiwen was somewhat puzzled. He hesitantly asked Xiao Hua, "What's wrong?" Nothing. Since he found the root, Xiao Hua immediately felt refreshed. He said with a smile, "This one always thought that the righteous chi was the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Who knew that it was actually so different?" "Oh, that's natural." Fu Jiwen understood and said with a smile, "This is the difference between the Dao sect and Confucian cultivators. Of course there are differences. However, sometimes, the righteous chi has the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and the righteous chi within the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. However, it may not be possible to distinguish them clearly. Then, how can one distinguish the righteous chi?" Xiao Hua asked tentatively, "Is it possible that there is a secret technique within the basic cultivation method of Confucian cultivators that is the same as the Dao sects?" "It's not the same." Fu Jiwen waved his hand and said, "The reason why Confucian cultivators are called Confucian cultivators is because they use the righteous chi as their foundation. They rely on Confucian to distinguish the righteous chi. Although everyone more or less has the righteous chi in their body, how can a common person like a common person understand the righteous chi? Only people like us who read and recite scriptures can read the righteous chi from the ancient characters. Only then can we use this righteous chi to trigger our own righteous chi. With our own righteous chi, only then can we draw on the righteous chi of heaven and earth. I've learned. Xiao Hua nodded. He understood that the cultivation of Confucian cultivators was still the same. It seemed that the so-called secret technique was just an opportunistic trick of the Tao sect. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart jumped. He seemed to have a bad premonition. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly asked, Fujiwen, just now, did you see something? Fellow Daoist Xiao, what are you talking about? Fujiwen was surprised by Xiao Hua's question. He didn't know what was going on. Xiao Hua saw Fujiwen's ignorance and unconsciously felt relieved. In the moment when he was absent-minded, Shui saw his death. Master Kuqin also saw his death. Xiao Hua didn't want this Confucian cultivator in front of him to follow in their footsteps. It's nothing. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said with a smile. However, just as he waved his hand a few times, he was stunned again. That's not right. If Confucian cultivators don't need the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to cultivate, then what spirit stones do they use? If they don't use spirit stones, why do they still use spirit stones on the hidden immortal continent? Xiao Hua seemed to have suddenly woken up. He seemed to have suddenly become confused. He frowned and thought. Chapter 3281. Forget it, let's just ask. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. Since I've already asked so many questions, I don't mind asking a few more idiotic questions. After Xiao Hua finished speaking the doubts in his heart, it was Fujiwen's turn to be surprised. If it was some common knowledge from before, it could be said that Xiao Hua was a cultivator from overseas and had not stepped on the continent for a long time, so he did not know much. However, this matter of origin stones was too inconceivable. Cough cough. Xiao Hua smiled. Young Master Fu, I've always been a lone cultivator and I've always been self-sufficient, so I really don't know about this. Nothing. Fujiwen hurriedly waved his hand. What you know is what you know, what you don't know is what you don't know. Fellow Daoist Xiao is indeed magnanimous, but I'm still lacking. Then, Fujiwen gave a simple explanation. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, this primordial stone also contained righteous chi. However, from what Fujiwen could see, the primordial stone was slightly inferior to the primordial chi used for Daoist cultivation. Of course, Confucian cultivators also had methods to absorb the noble spirit from the source stone. However, ordinary Confucian cultivators didn't use these methods. Confucian cultivators believed that the noble spirit was a living and lively world origin chi. Only the noble spirit that flowed between heaven and earth and was drawn from densely populated places was the best. Therefore, source stones were used to refine imperial equipment and arrange origin formations. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Connecting it to what he saw with his illusion breaker eyes, there were many types of world origin chi in this world. If Taoists picked one type, Confucian cultivators could naturally choose another type, and the world origin chi could also be condensed into a spirit stone. However, absorbing the noble spirit from heaven and earth is somewhat difficult. It's easy to absorb the noble spirit from the source stone. Nowadays, students are greedy and many students have secretly started to use source stones to cultivate. Fujiwen sighed and said, especially my Daoist sect spirit pills. It is said that after refining with a special method, it can also promote the cultivation of Confucian cultivators. Students who haven't broken through for a long time have also started to try. Now, the spirit grass and spirit fruits are a lot more expensive than before. Humans are insatiable and always seek opportunities for themselves. In the long run, what difference will there be between Confucianism and Taoism? In any case, this Xiao is a Daoist, so I won't worry about Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua shrugged. Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door, there's no need to worry about others. Looking back at the auction, legalist Senior Han Chang's handwriting had already set off a frenzy of bidding. Even young Master Duanmu, who was opposite Xiao Hua, was repeatedly bidding. Clearly, this handwriting was his main objective for coming to Zhai Xinglu this time. After more than 10 rounds of bidding, everyone finally stopped. No one else bid against young Master Duanmu. However, at this moment, everyone's gaze was focused on Xiao Hua. He thought that Xiao Hua hadn't opened his mouth to bid from beginning to end. Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua laughed. He finally understood why young Master Duanmu sent the visiting card. That was to test him, to show him a kind of intention. That was, to not let Xiao Hua compete with him in order to reach the bottom line in his heart. Add 10 high-grade primordial stones. Xiao Hua said indifferently. Boom. Everyone immediately cheered loudly. This one will also add 10 high-grade primordial stones. Young Master Duanmu's tone was also indifferent. It didn't matter if Xiao Hua increased the price, the key was that he couldn't force him step by step. In the end, it was just as young Master Duanmu thought. Xiao Hua only increased the price once, conveying that he already knew the meaning, and didn't say anything else. This caused the cultivators who wanted to watch the show to feel sad. All right. Yulin Feng had a smile on his face. With a wave of his hand, great scholar Han Chang's handwriting flew into young Master Duanmu's pavilion. With another wave of his hand, the second scroll slowly landed in front of him. This is the second great scholar's handwriting today. Fellow immortals may not be familiar with this great scholar, but fellow immortals definitely know about Confucianism. This great scholar is the Yin-Yang school's old master Zhou Yuanhan. Along with Yu Linfeng's long voice, he stretched out his slender finger and pulled the purple silk thread. As the scroll fell, 2 bright and dark rays of light suddenly appeared. Although it was somewhat inferior to Han Chang's sword qi, the light and dark rays had a solemn air of annihilation. At the same time, these 2 rays of light soared into the sky, higher than the previous sword qi, and formed the shape of a huge yin-yang fish in the night sky. As the brilliance of this yin-yang fish circulated in the night sky, thousands of evil spirits scattered in the night sky, causing the entire bright moon square to seem to tremble. Clear yang is the sky, turbid yin is the earth. Above the earth is the clouds, below the sky is the rain, rain comes from the earth, clouds come from the sky. Yin and yang are the Tao of heaven and earth, the outline of all things, the parents of change, the origin of life and death, and the abode of the gods. Fuji Wen looked at the yin-yang fish in the sky through the broken origin array of the bright moon palace inside. Heaven and earth have yin and yang turn into 2 qis. Everything can be divided into 2 sides, yin and yang. This school of yin-yang advocates controlling the yin and yang of heaven and earth, using the 2 qis of yin and yang to kill all things. The great scholar who established the school of yin-yang was Zhou Yan. Later on, because he was called Zi, he was given the name Zhou Yanzi. This old master Zhou Yuanhan is most likely his descendant. The esoteric debate is indeed formidable. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, even though our Taoism also has the saying that Tao begets one, and one is divided into yin and yang, but the profoundness of yin and yang is truly obscure. Without a certain level of cultivation, how can one understand it? This Xiao really did not expect that this Confucian cultivator actually has a school of yin-yang that specializes in studying yin and yang. Furthermore, this Xiao admires this senior Zhou Yanzi even more. How can he explain yin and yang so clearly? That's right, 100 years ago, when Xue Xue and Wu Hai's soul entered Xiao Hua's space, he had already experienced the division of yin and yang. If one were to talk about comprehension, Xiao Hua himself indeed has a lot. However, if one were to ask him to form a theory and explain it, it would be extremely difficult. Just like what the Taoists often say, Tao can be said, but it is not an ordinary Tao. Name can be named, but it is not an ordinary name. Just a few words can indeed extend a lot of comprehension, or can only be understood, but not explained. Actually, a strange expression appeared on Fujiwan's face. He hesitated for a bit, then smiled and said, "This Yin-Yang school might have been extremely powerful in the past. It is said that Senior Zhou Yanzi obtained an innate spiritual object called the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook. From it, he comprehended the Tao of Yin and Yang and established his own school. However, as the Yin-Yang school of Yin-Yang developed, the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook was lost for some unknown reason. The Yin-Yang school of Yin-Yang's research on Yin and Yang gradually deviated. Didn't fellow Taoist Yulin Fengjiu say it clearly just now? Everyone might not know about Zhou Yanzi, but almost everyone in the Yin-Yang school knows about him. That's because the current Yin and Yang, more or less falls into the intersection of Yin and Yang. Some crooked sects, such as the Yin-Yang Unity School, also pass down some of their secret techniques from the Yin-Yang school of Yin-Yang. At this point, Fujiwen did not say anything else. Xiaohua was also a person who had undergone dual cultivation. How could he not understand? Perhaps some dual cultivation secret technique, some fusion technique, these Yin and Yang mating techniques were the things that the Yin-Yang school of Yin-Yang was talking about, right? Decline. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This might be the current situation that those so-called rotten scholars don't want to see. Fujiwen smiled and said, "Time flies, clouds and flowers pass by like water. On this hidden immortal continent, not only are the dynasties of 10,000 countries replaced, even the 100 schools are also being washed away by great waves. Only schools and doctrines that can adapt to the changes of the times can truly be preserved. These are not things that can be done by humans." Back then, the Tao sect was tyrannical for a period of time. It could almost contend with the Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, and even the demon race. However, what about the current Tao sect? After the ancient war, wasn't it also obliterated? If you want to revive the Tao sect, is it something that can be done by a few generations? Let's not talk about this. When Fujiwen talked about the decline of the Tao sect, he seemed to be afraid that Xiaohua would be displeased, so he changed the topic. Looking at the fierce bidding scene downstairs, he said, "Such a rare Yin-Yang school of Yin-Yang writing, doesn't fellow Taoist Xiao want to bid for one? Even if this thing's true qi is used up, it is still an authentic work handed down from generation to generation." Forget it, Xiaohua said with a smile. If it was some Yin-Yang illustrated handbook, if it was some harmony secret manual, this Xiao would still be interested. What kind of writing is this? This Xiao doesn't understand. Fujiwen laughed. Fellow Taoist Xiao is really a straightforward person. If it was an ordinary Confucian scholar, they would definitely not say these words. You dare to do it while hiding in your room, but don't dare to say it when you come out. Xiaohua snorted disdainfully. If you want to say it, you have to use alternative words. For example, the joy of the boudoir is even greater than the one who draws the eyebrows. Fellow Taoist Xiao's straightforwardness is a disgrace to the refined. Damn it, to turn a good yin-yang into a marriage, isn't this a disgrace to the refined? Xiaohua really couldn't see through the act of covering one's ears while stealing a bell. Especially using words to replace imagination, it was really annoying. While the two were talking, that Zhou Yuanhan's old man Zhou's calligraphy was also bought by a certain senior on the 3rd floor. Xiaohua also clearly saw that young Master Duanmu also seemed to slightly raise the price and immediately gave up. Clearly, he also had a tacit understanding with the others. Xiaohua could know, and Yulin Feng even more so. However, this was a kind of mutual compromise. The price of the calligraphy was something that both sides could bear. Who would care about the movements behind the scenes? Yulin Feng sent that scroll to the third floor's balcony and began to bluff the third scroll. Fellow immortals, the writing on this third scroll is also very famous. Moreover, this school created a Confucian cultivation method that is widely spread in my hidden immortal continent. As he said that, Yulin Feng opened this scroll again. Hua, like a burst of water, 10,000 rays of brilliance poured out from the scroll. Like the Milky Way pouring out, it directly rushed into the night sky. It was incomparably gorgeous. Noble Spirit River. Dozens of young voices shouted in unison, "This is the school of vertical and horizontal Confucian cultivators." Ha! Yulin Feng laughed loudly and said, "Correct, correct. The river character on this scroll is the authentic work of the school of vertical and horizontal Confucian Lu Qing, Lu Wenxing." Chapter 3282. Upstairs, Fu Jiwen pointed at the righteous spirit that flashed like the Milky Way and said, "The school of vertical and horizontal is a very famous school in the esoteric debate. The school of vertical and horizontal is 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 the school of vertical and horizontal. This is the so-called vertical and horizontal. The school of vertical and horizontal was created by the two seniors Zhang Yi and Su Qin. Senior Su Qin advocated the vertical and Senior Zhang Yi advocated the horizontal. It was in the vertical and horizontal that the two seniors comprehended the true essence of water flow and created the cultivation method of the righteous spirit Long River. Using this as a basis, they were honored as Su Qin Zi and Zhang Yi Zi respectively, leaving their names in history. Moreover, this righteous spirit Long River is very easy to obtain. It is the simplest among the many cultivation methods of the Confucian cultivators. Therefore, once this cultivation method was spread out, it was immediately passed down. In the ancient times, the number of disciples of the school of vertical and horizontal were as many as the hairs on an ox. The Confucian cultivators who answered in unison just now were most likely disciples who cultivated the righteous spirit Long River. Of course, now that this cultivation method has been spread out, they may not necessarily be disciples of the school of vertical and horizontal. As Fu Jiwen spoke, many cultivators began to bid again. This time, the liveliness was even greater than before. This was because great scholar Lu Cheng's handwriting not only had the same righteous spirit Long River as the previous handwriting, but also the true essence of the righteous spirit Long River could be found in this handwriting. This was the so-called killing two birds with one stone. All the Confucian cultivators who cultivated the righteous spirit Long River naturally rushed like ducks. After seeing the righteous spirit Long River of legalism, school of yin yang, and school of vertical and horizontal, Xiaohua was looking forward to the handwriting in the last scroll. He simply didn't ask about the 10 great imperial artifacts that Fu Jiwen hadn't explained yet. He smiled and stuck his head out, looking at the sounds of bidding below with interest. Fu Jiwen saw that Xiaohua's attention wasn't here and didn't say much. He looked at Xiaohua's star-like figure with some confusion. He really didn't understand why Xiaohua asked him so much common sense. That's right, common sense. As a cultivator of the hidden immortal continent, whether they cultivated Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, or even Taoist cultivation methods, as long as they grew up here, they should know this common sense. Although Xiaohua was a Tao sect cultivator and didn't understand the cultivation of Confucian cultivators, the 100 Schools debate was an ancient story. The 10 great imperial artifacts were stories that ordinary people grew up listening to. How could Xiaohua not know? Even if he was an overseas rogue cultivator, he still had to grow up, right? Fu Jiwen did not believe that a cultivator who grew up in the hidden immortal continent would not know about the 10 great imperial equipment. Perhaps fellow Taoist Xiao came from the Thousand Demons sacred realm or the Pure Land world. This was Fu Jiwen's final guess, but this guess was immediately doubted by himself. Essence stones, who in the 3 continents didn't know about them? Maybe he came from the Pure Land. That place doesn't need vitality stones. When the dust settled, to everyone's surprise, the authentic work of the school of vertical and horizontal's great scholar, Lu Wenqing, was not bought by the cultivators on the balcony. The final bidder was an unknown cultivator on the ground floor. Looks like I'm not the only one who's keeping a low profile. Xiao Hua laughed. Fu Jiwen frowned and said, that might not be the case. In my opinion, I'm afraid several small aristocratic families or several sects gathered together to bid. Who cares who he is? It has nothing to do with me. I've never cultivated the noble spirit river, and I don't know anything about authentic works. Xiao Hua stretched. Moreover, this star-picking towers auction, TSK, it's really boring. There's nothing that I want. Fu Jiwen laughed and said, right now, the auction is for Confucian cultivators. Dao sex items are very rare. What about the especially precious items? Perhaps at the end, fellow Daoist Xiao, please don't be impatient. I know. Xiao Hua nodded and pointed outside the window, saying, what I want to know now is, who is the owner of the last scroll? Which school is it from? The most famous of the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators are Confucian, Mahist, Legalist, Military, School of Famous, Yin Yang, School of Vertical and Horizontal, School of Miscellaneous, School of Farmer, School of Novels, and School of Vertical and Horizontal. Just now, 3 great Confucian scrolls appeared, School of Legalism, School of Yin Yang, and School of Vertical and Horizontal. As for the 4th school, it's hard to guess. Fu Jiwen's curiosity was also great. He pinched his chin and looked at Yu Linfeng holding the 4th scroll in his hand. Yu Linfeng's face carried a trace of mystery. His hand was placed on the purple silk rope, but he didn't release it. Instead, he raised his head and looked around, saying with a smile, this last scroll, I don't know if it's out of everyone's expectations. Before Yu Linfeng finished speaking, his fingers shook. Boom! A violent vibration sounded, as if 10,000 horses were galloping. A 5-colored brilliance mixed with an indescribable noble spirit rushed out from the scroll. Ah! Xiao Hua was used to seeing the brilliance of Daoist cultivators' treasures. This 5-colored brilliance didn't count as anything magical. But Fu Jiwen actually jumped up from his chair in shock, shouting in shock, This is Confucian's 5 cheese unifications. Sure enough, that 5-colored noble spirit rushed into the night sky and actually formed an auspicious cloud several meters in size, illuminating half a mu of the sky. That 5-colored brilliance was different from when it rushed out just now. This time, it was extremely gentle, even more silky than a lover's gaze. And above this auspicious cloud, endless starlight faintly sprinkled down, enveloping the auspicious cloud. It really is Confucian's 5 cheese unifications. Fu Jiwen raised his head and said excitedly, Zhai Xinglu is indeed amazing, to actually be able to find the authentic writings of Confucian great Confucians. Nowadays, on the hidden immortal continent, the authentic writings of Confucian great Confucians have long been extinct. That's right, that's right. At this time, Xiao Hua suddenly shouted in hindsight, Young Master Fu, you just said that there must be Confucian writings among the century-old theories. Is Confucian the same as Confucian cultivators? Of course they're not the same. The excitement on Fu Jiwen's face hadn't disappeared, and he answered with a smile, Confucian cultivators are naturally a kind of cultivation method, just like what I just explained to fellow Daoist, using the noble spirit of heaven and earth as the foundation. And Confucian is a school of Confucian cultivators. It's just that the influence and scale of this school is far greater than the sum of the other schools, so this cultivation method is also called Confucian cultivators. It's not what fellow Daoist thinks, that Confucian cultivators are Confucian cultivators. At this point, Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly again, smacking his lips and saying, although that's the case, in reality, Confucian cultivators account for 90% of Confucian cultivators. Saying that Confucian cultivators are Confucian cultivators is not impossible. Who was the great scholar who founded Confucian? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and he asked with extreme curiosity. Speaking of Confucian cultivators, Fu Jiwen was also in high spirits, and he spoke frankly with assurance. Confucian cultivators are one of the most important schools of thought in the 100 schools of thought. Confucian cultivators use the 6 arts as their method: advocate, etiquette, music, benevolence, and righteousness. They advocate loyalty and forgiveness, and they advocate the golden mean. They advocate rule of virtue and benevolence. Confucian cultivators emphasize the function of education, and they believe that heavy education and light punishment is the only way for a country to be stable and the people to be rich and happy. They advocate education without discrimination, and they should educate both the ruler and the ruled, so that the whole country from top to bottom becomes a person of high moral character. The founder of Confucian was surnamed Kong, and his name was Zhou. His courtesy name was Zhong and I. He was from Yu Province's Lu country, and after he founded the Confucian school, he was revered as Confucius. Today, he is respectfully called Eternal Paragon by the later generations of Hidden Immortal Continent. The core of his theory is benevolence. He advocates love and demands that people should love each other and get along harmoniously. To realize benevolence, one must be tolerant of others, and do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. And the system or code of conduct that embodies benevolence is restrain oneself and return to etiquette. Confucius's works include poem, book, etiquette, music, and so on. These 5 books are the most famous, and they are often called the 5 classics by Hidden Immortal Continent. Other than Confucius, there are 2 other important figures in Confucian. One is Meng Ku, whose courtesy name is Ziyu. Senior Meng Ku advocates benevolence, and further proposes that the people are the most important, the state comes second, and the ruler is the least important. His ethics is good by nature. The other is Sun Kuang, and people at that time called him Sun Qing. He advocates benevolence and righteousness, and the way of the king, and using virtue to convince people. He also proposed that the ruler is the boat, and the commoners are the water. The water carries the boat, and it also capsizes the boat. These 2 were also respectfully called Zi by later generations, Meng Zi and Sun Zi. The 4 books that Hidden Immortal Continent often refers to, De Shui, the Golden Mean, the Analects, and Meng Zi, were written by these 3 great scholars. Although the cultivation method of Confucian cultivators was passed down from ancient times, it doesn't matter what it was called in the beginning. After Confucian cultivators appeared, this cultivation method became Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua understood and sighed. The influence of Confucian cultivators on Hidden Immortal Continent is so deep. These opinions and propositions, although they are not cultivation, they are enough to have an impact on cultivation. This 5 Qis unifications should be the manifestation of the noble Qi in the chest of Confucian cultivators being condensed to the extreme, right? Fu Jiwen nodded and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao is right." Confucian cultivators emphasize on entering the world, which is different from Daoist cultivators. Therefore, all Confucian cultivators have their own opinions to govern the country and educate the people. This is related to cultivation, but also has nothing to do with it. This 5 Qis unifications is the purpose of Confucian cultivators. As long as one cultivates to the realm of 5 Qis unifications, one's physical body can become a saint, and one can ascend. Hiss. Hearing this, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air, as if he had thought of an inconceivable question. He almost blurted out, "Then, the place where Confucian cultivators ascend, is the immortal world. Is this immortal world the same as the immortal world of Taoists?" Ha ha ha. Fu Jiwen laughed heartily. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, if you want me to answer this question, I'm afraid you have to wait for me to cultivate to the realm of 5 cheese unifications, ascend to the immortal world, and then return from the immortal world, right? Hearing this, Xiaohua touched his nose and helplessly said, "This is indeed true." At this time, at the auction, the people who were as shocked as Fu Jiwen were also boiling with excitement. The people who were familiar with each other were not only whispering, but even the people who didn't know each other were also saying something loudly. If they weren't showing off their talent, then they were showing off their knowledge. Chapter 3283. Fellow immortals, you can see it clearly. Yu Linfeng loudly said, "This is the word Confucian written by the Confucian school's senior Kong Liwen. When he wrote this scroll, he had already stepped into the realm of literary star. Therefore, the auspicious clouds of the 5 cheese unifications can also attract the starlight from the sky to destroy evil and exorcise demons. If this book was written by Confucius, the sage Kong Liwen, it would definitely be a clear cloud with a righteous aura. Not to mention the starlight, even if one's eyesight was slightly poor, they might not be able to see it." Fu Jiwen sighed, "Unfortunately, this one has only heard of it. This is the first time I've seen the handwriting of a great Confucian scholar." "Oh, why is that?" Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. The Confucian school emphasizes the path of the golden mean. The golden mean is impartial and without fault. The common principle is the natural order of the heavens, the pinnacle of subtlety. Confucius's righteous aura must be quiet and without a trace, without the smoke and fire of the mortal world. This one understands. Xiaohua nodded. Although he didn't quite understand the meaning of this sentence, within the Tao sect's magical techniques, the brilliant ones didn't necessarily have great power. It was precisely those magical techniques that contained terrifying power that were extremely restrained and wouldn't waste unnecessary spiritual qi. Seeing Yu Linfeng put away the scroll, the soaring righteous aura disappeared. Xiaohua heard the bidding sounds downstairs and his heart itched. He secretly pondered whether he should also get one to play with. Actually, this path of the golden mean originated from Confucius, but it flourished with Zhu Xi, old man Zhu. Fu Jiwen sorted out his mood, slowly sat down, and said casually, "What? Zhu Xi? Old man Zhu?" Xiaohua heard this and was suddenly shocked. "Is it the Confucian Zhu family?" "Oh. Fellow Xiao actually knows about the Zhu family." Fu Jiwen was greatly surprised. Xiaohua laughed, "Hee, this one can't possibly not know anything. I've heard of this Zhu family. I wonder how they are now." "How are they now?" A strange expression appeared on Fu Jiwen's face again. He looked out of the window and said, "The Zhu clan has been passed down since ancient times and has lived in Wuyuan County of Shuzhou. Back then, Zhu Xi, old master Zhu's name shook the hidden immortal continent. He was known as another great master after Confucius who could be respected as Z. However, after the war between Confucianism and Buddhism, for some unknown reason, the once prosperous Zhu clan actually declined. In the end, it actually disappeared without a trace. Now, there are many surnames of Zhu on the hidden immortal continent, but I have never heard of anyone who is the true descendant of the Zhu clan." Xiaohua inwardly nodded his head. He already understood that the Zhu family had likely been annihilated by the Tao sect. Their descendants should have been cursed by the Tao sect experts, causing them to slowly decline. It's a pity that the Zhu family has been annihilated, and so has the Zhu family's academic legacy. Fu Jiwen's face was filled with regret. Even now, there are still many students who frequently travel to Shuzhou's Wuyuan County to study, hoping to discover the heritage of the Zhu clan. That inheritance is second only to Confucius's knowledge. If you can get it, it will definitely be an amazing achievement. Hee, obtaining and achieving are two different things. Xiaohua laughed. Fellow Taoist Xiao is right. But since you can get it, you might be able to break through the Zhu clan's academic legacy and become a great scholar. Fu Jiwen also nodded his head. Who wouldn't like this kind of temptation? It's still fame and fortune. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. While they were talking, the bidding for the authentic work of Senior Kong Liwen had finally reached the climax. Young Master Duanmu, who was opposite Xiao Hua, seemed to be competing with another VIP on the third floor to raise the price, directly raising the price to a terrifying level. Unfortunately, in the end, young Master Duanmu actually had no choice but to give up when the other party only increased the price by one top-grade primeval stone. This made Xiao Hua sigh endlessly. Perhaps the 3 top-grade primeval stones that Xiao Hua used to obstruct him were the last few straws that broke the camel's back. The bidding for the authentic work of great scholar came to an end. The next bidding was still for the items of hidden immortal continent. However, these things were mostly refining techniques of imperial tools, only some great refiners had use for them. Not only were there few people bidding, even Xiao Hua was too lazy to listen. He could be considered to be proficient in the refining techniques of Dao sect and soul cultivators. He also knew a lot of refining techniques of the devil world. Imperial tools, in essence, most of them were derived from Dao sect's tools. Xiao Hua could refine spirit tools, why would he be greedy for the refining techniques of imperial tools? Young Master Fu. Xiao Hua raised his hand and took out some spirit fruits from the space. He handed them to Fu Jiwen and said, "Try these spirit fruits, and then continue to analyze the remaining 10 great imperial tools with this Xiao." Okay. Fu Jiwen clapped his hands and took the spirit fruit. He gently took a bite, tasted it, and said, "Can I bring some back?" "Of course you can." Xiao Hua nodded his head. However, these spirit fruits are full of heaven and earth primeval qi, people without cultivation are not suitable to eat. This one understands. Fu Jiwen carefully received some and replied, "My wife likes these things, but this one is incompetent and can hardly satisfy her request, so it's like that." Xiao Hua understood and said enviously, "It's rare for your wife to be so loving, so this Xiao won't help you." Then, with a wave of Xiao Hua's hand, a large pile of spirit fruits appeared on the table as if they didn't cost primeval stones. Ah! This is too much. Fu Jiwen was shocked and hurriedly refused. "It's okay, it's just some snacks. Young Master Fu, take it and eat." Xiao Hua casually waved his hand. "This Xiao has troubled you for so long, I'm sorry." "All right." Fu Jiwen was really moved in his heart and happily put all the spirit fruits into his small universe bag. Then, he took out a bright red fruit and said while eating, "Ranked above the mysterious demon chess are the tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither." The reason why these 2 imperial equipment are placed together is because these 2 imperial equipment were used by the people of the Immortal Palace before the Golden Boy and Jade Girl were conferred into the Immortal Palace. Just now, didn't this one tell fellow Xiao that this music is one of the 5 classics of the Confucian school, and the art of music is also one of the compulsory lessons for students? The tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither are imperial equipment that mainly use sound attacks. Of course, if we were to simply talk about the power of these 2 imperial equipment, I personally believe that they cannot be compared to the demon and god chess. Perhaps it is because everyone thinks that these 2 imperial equipment are elegant, so they place them on the demon and god chess. Speaking of the tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither, naturally there is a story that everyone knows. Fu Jiwen said again, "In the early years, the Golden Boy and Jade Girl didn't know each other, and they were also enemies. When the 2 were young, they met in the same academy. It wasn't love at first sight, but after a long time, the 2 gradually developed feelings for each other. However, when the 2 were ready to reveal their relationship, they were discovered by their families. The 2 finally understood that their lovers were enemies, and under the opposition of the 2 families, the 2 couldn't get married. Therefore, the two had no choice but to stop their studies and fly away. However, since the seed of love was planted, it was inevitable that it would sprout. When the seed grew into a big tree, the golden boy and jade girl couldn't help but inquire about the other party's situation. When the two found out that the other party had rejected countless marriage proposals, and even Jade Girl didn't hesitate to fight with her life, the two's hearts suddenly softened. Just when the two were about to get in touch, the war between the two families broke out. The two families fought in a dangerous situation and killed each other. Many of their elders died, and even if the two were in love with each other, they were forced to act against each other's families. At the end of the bloody battle, the two finally met, but the two couldn't bear to kill each other. At the crucial moment, the two stepped into the trap set by the two families in advance, and prepared to go to the Yellow Springs together. This trap was set up by taking advantage of the danger of foreign objects. After the two fell into the dangerous situation, everyone thought that the two would die without a doubt. But after they fought a bloody battle for a night, they saw the inside of the dangerous situation shine brightly, and then a wonderful music like the sound of nature came out from inside. That music was like rain, and erased the blood in everyone's heart. That music was like the sound of heaven, and all the dead souls were transcended. In this music, everyone was remorseful, and everyone was reflecting. When the music was over, the two families didn't want to kill each other anymore. They shook hands and made peace, and vowed to be good for their families. When the two families made the vow, the golden boy and jade girl each took the tranquil heart flute and heavenly melody zither and flew out of the dangerous situation. The two were in love, and their love was stronger than gold. In the case of dying for love, the heavens were moved, and they actually obtained two imperial equipment in this dangerous situation. It was also these two who relied on these imperial equipment to change the blood feud between the two families. When the two cultivated to the 5-chi unification realm, they received the conferring document from the Immortal Palace, and entered the Immortal Palace to serve. Made up. Hearing Fu Jiwen's words, Xiaohua unrestrainedly asserted, not only is this story cliché, it's also full of flaws. Not to mention that when the two met in the academy, they didn't inquire about each other's background, and not to mention that the two were able to walk together in the battle between the two families, and went into the dangerous situation together. Just this imperial equipment, it's impossible to control it right away. The final ending is even more bullshit. I'm afraid that the old woman gave the name of the Immortal Palace to her young granddaughter to make them happy, right? Fu Jiwen shrugged, and said with a smile, maybe. But this story has been circulating in the hidden immortal continent for many years, and no one doubted it. Also, the tranquil heart flute and heavenly melody zither, these two imperial equipment are indeed from the Immortal Palace. It said that when the Immortal Palace sent soldiers to capture the demons who didn't submit to the Immortal Palace, someone personally saw the power of these two imperial equipment. That's what the Immortal Palace used to trick people, to make people admire the Immortal Palace. Xiaohua pointed with his hand, and said downstairs, just like this Yulin Feng, saying so much, isn't it just to make people pay more origin stones? Ha ha ha, Fu Jiwen laughed, because downstairs, Fu Jiwen was bidding for a phoenix tail zither, and was exaggerating. Chapter 3284. By the way, what do you mean by Immortal Palace capturing unruly demons? Xiaohua asked in confusion, does Immortal Palace still care about Hidden Immortal Continent? Hidden Immortal Continent has tens of thousands of countries and hundreds of millions of people. Fu Jiwen explained, these ordinary governance rights are all in the hands of the kings of the 10,000 countries. Immortal Palace naturally won't intervene. Even if the country's power changes, Immortal Palace still won't care. Even if a power different from Confucian cultivators appears, Immortal Palace may not intervene. But if these powers openly compete with Immortal Palace, openly oppose Confucian cultivators, and openly slaughter Confucian cultivators, then Immortal Palace will definitely kill them. According to what I know, 800 years ago, in the Yong province, there was a powerful bull demon who wanted to establish his own empire. Moreover, he treated the common people of the Yong province as his food. This angered the immortal palace, and they sent troops to kill that bull demon. Oh, isn't bull demon a demon of thousand demons' sacred realm? Can immortal palace just kill it? Xiao Hua asked in surprise. The real demons of thousand demons' sacred realm have never disdained to come to hidden immortal continent and western paradise. The demons that can appear in hidden immortal continent are not the orthodox demons of thousand demons' sacred realm. Moreover, Thousand Demons Sacred Realm's Great Sage Palace has also publicly announced that any demon that enters hidden immortal continent and western paradise will be killed without mercy. Fu Jiwen said with a smile, so Immortal Palace also didn't show mercy to this bull demon. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua understood. When he was about to ask what the number 1 ranked imperial equipment was, Yulin Feng pressed his hand down. The hidden immortal continent's light ball that was just flickering with brilliance immediately dimmed, and the light ball next to it started to glow. Fellow immortals, all the rare items of hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators have been sold. Now, I will take out some rare items from Western Paradise, please bid. As Yulin Feng's voice fell, dang, dang, dang. The sound of the wooden fish rang out from the ball of light, and the complete Sanskrit chants rang out at the same time. Amitba. The old monks who were sitting steadily had no choice but to put their palms together and stand up to shout. Namo Amitba. A Buddhist chant resounded throughout the entire place. The ball of light suddenly expanded and turned into a barefooted Buddha that was several feet tall. He stood in the air, and the swastika character between his brows and the benevolence in his slightly opened eyes instantly attracted everyone's attention. Swoosh! The barefoot Buddha waved his hand, and it came crashing down like a mountain. Dang, 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 dang. A series of hurried sounds of the wooden fish rang out again, and then there was a deathly silence. Whether it was the wooden fish or the Sanskrit chanting, both had disappeared. As the Buddha's huge hand pressed down, the entire Buddha flickered with golden light, and in a breath's time, it turned into fireflies. The fireflies danced in the air for a moment, and then condensed into the outline of the Nirvana world. Just like before, there were more than 10 slightly larger balls of light. These balls of light were different from the ones in the hidden immortal continent. There were no other colors, only pure Buddhist light. Namo Amitba. Several old monks chanted in unison. As I heard, for a time, Bagafan lived at the top of the Eagle Peak in the royal resident city, along with a group of 1,250 people. They were all arhats, and they were all exhausted, no more worries, truly free. Their hearts were good, and their wisdom was good, like a wise horse or a great dragon. What they had done, they had abandoned all burdens, they had grasped their own benefits, and they were all tied up. They knew that they were free, and their hearts were free. Apart from Ananda, they lived alone and learned to obtain the fruit of pre-flow. Mahakasyapa was the highest. Several old monks were solemn as they chanted Buddhist scriptures. The entire auction house was silent for a moment, and then there was a lot of noise. Clearly, these Confucian cultivators were not very interested in Buddhism. Yulin Feng had an apologetic smile on his face. He raised his hand and saluted to his left and right. My hidden immortal continent is a land of etiquette. Since there are treasures of Buddhism here, we naturally have to respect them. We will wait for a moment, and it won't be too late to bid after these masters finish chanting. Yulin Feng, hurry up. It's already late. I still have to go back and meditate with my beautiful concubine. Who's here to listen to their nonsense for no reason? Who would have thought that just as Yulin Feng's voice fell, an irritable voice rang out. Not only was it blaming Yulin Feng, it was also ridiculing Buddhism's old monks. Yulin Feng saw that everyone was unhappy and bitterly smiled. Since it's like this, then I will start bidding. With that, Yulinfeng grabbed with his hand, and a Buddhist light flew out from the outline of the Pure Land and landed in front of Yulinfeng. When the Buddhist light faded away, it was a monk's staff. That monk's staff had 6 dragons coiled around it, and each dragon head was extremely ferocious. Where was the benevolent appearance of Buddhism? This is one of the 18 treasures of the Pure Land. It is said to be the personal item of the famous Buddhist monk, Miao Qin. These 6 dragons are the protectors of Buddhism. This monk's staff has the power of 6 dragons after using Buddhism's secret technique. And with this 6-dragon monk's staff, one can also ride the wind. Yulinfeng gave a brief introduction, then continued, I'm afraid that only Buddhism's experts can clearly see the mysteries of this monk's staff. I'm not fated with Buddhism, so I can't explain it clearly. The starting price of this monk's staff is 10 upper-grade vitality stones, and each increment is 1 upper-grade vitality stone. I invite the fated person to make a bid. Just as Yulinfeng finished speaking, someone immediately raised their hand to bid, out of Xiao Hua's expectations. Strange. Xiao Hua laughed. Weren't there a lot of people making a racket just now? Why didn't they wait for these monks to finish reciting the scriptures before making a move? Could it be that they're trying to sell dog meat under false pretenses? This. Fu Jiwen looked around and hesitated. He whispered, I'm not sure about this situation. I remember that when I came down last time, there were very few people bidding for these Buddhist artifacts. Most of them weren't sold. Perhaps these people were planted by Zhai Xinglu. Xiao Hua frowned. They want the old monks of Buddhism to pay more vitality stones. Not necessarily. Fu Jiwen shook his head. These old monks of Buddhism don't care about ordinary Buddhist artifacts. They're eager to throw the Buddhist artifacts, scriptures, and Buddhas from Nirvana to hidden immortal continent. What they care about are the relics of the eminent monks. Although those relics contain the psyche power of the eminent monks, most of it is the karma of the eminent monks. These karma are extremely difficult to control and can only be transcended using Buddhism. If it's obtained by someone with ill intentions, it may have an adverse effect on Buddhism. Moreover, relics are also the bodies of the eminent monks. Buddhism won't let them wander outside and want to bring them back to Nirvana to be buried. Xiao Hua nodded. If that's the case, these bidders should have the cultivation of Buddhism. I'm afraid that's the case. Seeing the auction gradually becoming lively, Fu Jiwen sighed. Buddhism's invasion of Confucian cultivators is very serious. Bronze Pillar country strictly forbids Taoist and Buddhist temples, but it can't stop Confucian cultivators from practicing Buddhism's cultivation methods. Many Confucian cultivators who can't make any progress in Confucian cultivation may turn their eyes to Taoist and Buddhist sects, wanting to use them to advance their cultivation. And Buddhism's cultivation methods and Heart Sutras have always been given away casually. Confucian cultivators with cultivation experience can easily enter the sect. In the long run, hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators will no longer be Confucian. Young Master Fu. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Don't ask others to worry. Don't you also have the cultivation of Taoist? Fu Jiwen hesitated slightly and shook his head slightly. My situation is different from theirs and also different from fellow Xiao. All right. Xiao Hua didn't pursue the matter. After all, this matter already involved Fu Jiwen's secret. But at this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of something. Oh right, young Master Fu, didn't you say that there would be flying imperial devices from hidden immortal continent? Why aren't there any? The last time I came, I saw Bright Moon Palace bid for quite a few flying imperial devices. This time, I'm afraid there aren't any left. Fu Jiwen said hesitantly. Or perhaps, when the last few imperial devices are up for auction, we'll bid again. Forget it, let's wait and see. Xiaohua nodded and looked at the auction. After the 6 dragon staff, there were some other Buddhist artifacts, or prayer beads, or alms bowls, or incense burners. There was even a water bottle with a willow stuck on it. Seeing the aqua vase appear, Xiaohua almost jumped up. However, when he saw the numerous sprouts on the willow tree that were trying their best to grow, he sat down. It was very obvious that the willow tree branch was a living thing. Perhaps it was broken off by some little bird at dusk and inserted into the aqua vase. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua asked again, "Young Master Fu, do you know what the Buddhist sect's biggest 18 objects are?" "Of course I know," Fu Jiwen said very casually. The 18 objects are the 18 objects that Buddhist sect's eminent monks often carry with them. These 18 objects are the Buddhist sect's eminent monks' protection. Unfortunately, one of them has committed a minor sin. Among them, there are 3 grades: heavy, medium, and light. That is, Li San Yi is shedding, which is a heavy sin. Li Bo is Tuji Luo, which is a medium sin. The rest are light sins. These ordinary Buddhist sect monks only use 6 kinds of things: Li San Yi, Li Bo, and water pouch. These 6 kinds of things are known as the bhikkhu's 6 objects. Although this humble one did not deliberately listen to these things, the monks who are everywhere often preach them. This humble one listened and understood. Immediately after, Fu Jiwen looked at the kasaya that he was bidding for. He pointed at it and said, "In fact, these 18 objects are what ordinary people need in life. They are yangji, which is a wooden chip used to remove the stench in the mouth. Bathing bean, which is a powder ground from soybeans, beans, and peas, which is used for bathing and washing. Li San Yi, which refers to the 3 kinds of clothes of Sangha, Yodoro, and Ontua. Li Bo, which refers to the army's 3 kinds of clothes. Li Bo, which is a water bottle used to hold water for washing or drinking. Li Bo, which is also known as a measuring vessel, which is used to hold food. Li Bo, which is a cloth on the ground or on the bed when sitting or lying down. Li Bo, which is a staff with a li bo on the head. When walking, the li bo vibrates to alert people of insects on the road, or when begging to attract people's attention. Incense burner, which is an instrument used to burn incense and invite Buddhas. Li bo, which is also known as a water filter, a cloth used to filter insects in water. Li bo, which is a cloth used to wipe hands, including face wipes, body wipes, and feet wipes. Knife, which is used to cut clothes, shave hair, and cut claws. Li bo, which is a flintlock used to strike a fire. Li bo, which is a tool used to pluck out nose hairs or thorns. Li bo, which is a bed made of rope, which is convenient for sitting in meditation. Chapter 3285. So that's how it is. Xiaohua stared blankly for a moment before bursting into laughter. "I thought the 18 objects were some profound things, but it turns out, it's just like this." However, the Buddhist artifacts of the Buddhist sect need to be supported by the Buddhist Dharma. They need to be constantly nourished by their psyche power, so most of the Buddhist artifacts come from these 18 objects. Fu Jiwen pointed out the strangeness, because these 18 objects don't leave the monk's side every day. Forget it, thinking about the kasaya on top of his Buddha Sarira, the 9 dragon staff, and even the clear water bottle, all of which were things that the old monk never left his body for who knows how many years ago. Xiaohua felt a bit sick of them. However, since they were all worn by the Buddha Sarira, Xiaohua didn't think of throwing them away. The fun is here. Just when Xiaohua was feeling disgusted by the Buddhist artifacts and was somewhat distracted, Fu Jiwen suddenly stood up from the chair and walked to the window with a smile. "Oh." Xiaohua was also curious. He looked outside and saw that there were dozens of jade boxes lined up in front of Yulin Feng. Each jade box was wide open, and inside were sariras as big as chicken eggs and as small as soybeans. These sariras were of different quality. Some emitted pure Buddhist light while others emitted multicolored light. Not only Xiao Hua, who had already condensed a fourth-stage lotus platform, could tell at a glance, but even a Confucian scholar who didn't have the cultivation of a Buddhist sect could also tell. However, Yu Lingfeng's voice sounded again. Fellow immortals, these are the sariras of the Buddhist monks that my Zhai Xing Lu painstakingly found near Yu province. As for the use of these sariras, there are Buddhist monks here, so I can't say it clearly. However, if there's anyone who doesn't know, you can go to my Zhai Xing Lu's place to look for it. All I have to say is that the Buddhist light is incomparably pure and can perfectly blend with the righteous energy of my Confucian cultivator. The base price of each of these Buddhist relics is 1 top-grade primeval stone. Damn it. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is the hidden immortal continent. 1 top-grade primeval stone, what kind of concept is that? Just now, the true work of the great Confucian scholar only used a top-grade primeval stone as the base price. How could these relics have a base price of 1 top-grade primeval stone? What was more special was that these relics were of different qualities. Zhai Xing Lu's starting price was 1 supreme-grade primordial stone. Wasn't that clearly bullying? However, someone had really stepped forward to be bullied by Zhai Xing Lu. As soon as Yu Linfeng finished speaking, a voice shouted, "I'll add 10 top-grade source stones for that untainted relic. This old man will add 50 upper-grade primordial stones. No, a relic of this quality can raise my nature energy by 2 grades. I'll give you 2 supreme-grade primordial stones, Fu Jiwen laughed. These people are really not afraid of trouble. Last time, when everyone made fun of these old monks, they still cared about their reputation and added upper-grade primordial stones one by one. This time, they actually added 2 top-grade primordial stones at once. Are they sure that these old monks are going to take action? Xiao Hua faintly smiled and asked, if the old monk were to go into silent meditation, this Xiao would like to see how they will deal with this. That won't happen. Fu Jiwen shook his head and said, Buddhism emphasizes that monks don't lie. Whatever they say should definitely be believed. According to this one's knowledge, every time Zhai Xing Lu holds this kind of auction, they will definitely be present. All the relics will never be left behind. All of them will be bought by them. Monks don't lie. Say that again after you've seen people like Hanju. Xiao Hua was rather disapproving of this sentence, but hearing the end, Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. Then how much primordial stones will they spend? Fu Jiwen snorted and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, why don't you see who is behind them? Who? Xiao Hua seemed to have understood something, but he still asked. Behind them are the kind men and women of Burial Immortal Continent and Western Paradise Continent. The daily offerings of these trillions of kind men and women are unimaginable to ordinary people. These monks are relying on these offerings to straighten their backs and dare to challenge here. This is why they dare to say that every relic must be bought. Fu Jiwen sneered, it is also because of this, the relics here, these monks must buy them. Otherwise, they won't be able to answer to these kind men and women. Sigh. Xiao Hua listened and looked at the several monks whose expressions were calm as if they were not affected by the increasing bidding price of the relics. He sighed and said, respectfully welcoming the relics of the eminent monks back to Western Paradise Continent and letting the departed souls of these eminent monks rest in peace, this is originally a very good thing. If both sides were kind, it would be a good thing. But now one side is trying their best to raise the price, secretly rejoicing in their own gains, while the other side is fearless and unhesitatingly taking out the offerings of others. This is already not a good thing to respectfully welcome, but an evil thing to flaunt. I'm afraid this is one of the methods Buddhism uses to attract believers in Burial Immortal Continent, right? Fu Jiwen thought carefully and of course also felt sad. He nodded and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao is right. Even if this one is just a bystander, watching the show, it seems like I'm also helping the tyrant. That's natural." Xiaohua nodded and looked at the entire Bright Moon Palace. "And this Shai Xinglu is the chief evil and also the instigator. The secular people are right. Money is the source of all evil. Shai Xinglu accumulates wealth like this." At this point, Fu Jiwen did not dare to talk nonsense anymore. Seeing that the monk from the Buddhist sect did not respond, the several Confucian scholars who had been aggressively bidding immediately lost their confidence. They began to raise the price one by one. However, the number of people who raised the price also decreased. Quite a number of people chose to withdraw. After all, not everyone was willing to try this kind of stimulation that was similar to beating drums and passing flowers. Amitabha. Suddenly, one of the few old monks who looked relatively young took a step forward. He put his palms together and bowed to the surroundings. "These relics are something that my Buddhist sect must obtain. I'm sure everyone already knows that. As for the meaning of the relics, this old monk also does not want to say much. These are the wandering souls of my Buddhism sect. This old monk is under the orders of the Buddha Lord to welcome them back to Western Paradise Continent. These relics can increase a Confucian cultivator's noble spirit, but correspondingly, the negative karma in the relics will also be added to the cultivator's body. Everyone here does not understand the secret arts of my Buddhism sect and does not know how to eliminate negative karma and get rid of negative karma. In the future, you will definitely be tired of this negative karma. Therefore, this old monk advises everyone here that greed is easy to breed and negative karma is difficult to eliminate. Practicing honestly is the right path." As he spoke, the monk pointed at the dozens of relics floating in the air. "These are the wandering souls of my Buddhist sect's Arhat. My Buddha Lord is willing to redeem each wandering soul with 3 supreme-grade primordial stones. If anyone here is willing to pay a higher price than my Buddhism sect, then please go ahead. My Arhat's wandering souls cannot rest in peace in Western Paradise Continent. My Buddhist sect's hundreds of millions of benefactors who sincerely worship Buddha will also not be at ease." This monk. Upstairs, Fu Jiwen was stunned. He actually dares to threaten. Looks like the Buddhism sect also has no surplus food. Xiaohua sighed and looked at Yulin Feng. He knew this monk's threat was nothing. The only one who would suffer losses was Zhai Xinglu. Yulin Feng's brows frowned a little, then he laughed and said loudly, "The Buddhist sect's master has already made a big bid. I wonder which immortal friend wants to increase the price. How can there be anyone who wants to charge forward?" Fu Jiwen lost interest and walked back to the chair from the window. He sat down and said, "This is hundreds of supreme-grade primordial stones, who can afford it?" Just now, this monk already said those harsh words. If some idiot increases the price by 1 supreme-grade primordial stone and these monks really give up, wouldn't this idiot cry himself to death? What if I take this idiot? Xiaohua looked at the dozens of relics, his heart beating wildly, and he almost blurted out. "Tch, Fu Jiwen was disdainful. Fellow Daoist Xiao is neither a Confucian cultivator nor a member of the Buddhism sect. Why would you take this idiot? If you want to be, it should be someone from Zhai Xinglu." Hiss. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air and hurriedly suppressed the greed in his heart. Nonsense, it was a blessing to have 3 cultivators, but from another point of view, it was a great tragedy. In this conflict between Confucians and Buddhists, he might be caught in the middle. He might as well be a Daoist loose cultivator. Why would he expose his Buddhism sect cultivation for no reason? That's true, Xiaohua nodded and looked at the scene. He smiled and said, "I bet that Zhai Xinglu will definitely test it out." Fu Jiwen shook his head slightly. "I don't think so, because there's really no need. Let's wait and see. Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. Sure enough, after Yulinfeng's words fell, no one spoke. After half a cup of tea's time, Yulinfeng said helplessly, if no one bids, this old man will add 3 supreme-grade primordial stones for each relic. A slightly shaky voice came from downstairs. Damn it! Fu Jiwen almost jumped out of his chair. This is too fake. The people downstairs, can they have hundreds of supreme-grade primordial stones? According to the rules, they have no right to bid at all. Haha, there's no need to be so angry. Xiaohua smiled. This is just like how young Master Duanmu tested me. Zhai Xinglu must give the Buddhism sect face, and the Buddhism sect must give Zhai Xinglu an answer. This auction is just a question and answer, nothing more. And this Xiao is sure that the bidder will definitely get something from this supreme-grade primordial stone. Sure enough, just as Xiaohua thought, the monk said lightly, this old monk will add 1 supreme-grade primordial stone for each relic. That person didn't make a sound. Yulinfeng laughed and waved his hand. The dozens of jade boxes closed at the same time and flew to the monk. The monk bowed and said, Amitabha, many thanks to Zhai Xinglu for your help. Chapter 3286. With a wave of the monk's yellow robes, the dozens of jade boxes disappeared at the same time. Then, with another wave of his hand, a small cosmos bag flew out of his sleeve and slowly landed in front of Yulinfeng. This is the ransom for the dozens of Buddhas. Yulinfeng, please check it. Monks don't lie. I know that. Yulinfeng naturally wouldn't check it and accepted it with a smile. Then, when he saw the old monks turn around and leave without a word, he hurriedly shouted, I'll see you off, masters. Amitabha. The monks left, but a Buddhist chant that was as clear as spring water was left in the auction. Ha! An eminent monk is indeed an eminent monk. Although this Buddhist chant didn't contain a trace of psychokinesis, it was enough to hear one's heart. Yulinfeng hurriedly laughed and said, they turned around and left without leaving a speck of dust behind. Since the masters have left, Zhai Xinglu's auction is about to end. The treasures from the Pure Land have already fallen to the ground. Zhai Xinglu still has some items from the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. However, the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm is too dangerous for the human race. These items are not even comparable to the ones from the Pure Land. Of course, these few items are definitely the best of the best. That's why Zhai Xinglu has always placed the items from the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm at the end of the auction. Come on. Yulinfeng finished speaking and waved his hand. Call. A bird's cry that shook the entire place was suddenly heard. An extremely small light spot flew over from afar. In the blink of an eye, the light spot transformed into a bird that was several feet large. This bird looked like an eagle, but it wore a golden crown on its head. Under the golden crown, the majestic eagle's eyes shone with a light that couldn't be looked at directly. Boom! The bird spread its wings as it landed, and thousands of streams of light flew out from its huge wings. When the bird stretched its neck and let out a long cry, the thousands of streams of light rushed into the outline of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and turned into a few spots of light. Fellow Daoist Xiao. On the balcony, Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly. I lost the bet earlier. I admit defeat. Ha, actually, you didn't lose. Xiaohua looked at the bird's shadow with interest and said with a smile, it's just that you never had the chance to come into contact with these scheming people, so you don't know what they're thinking. A loss is a loss. Fu Jiwen waved his hand. Fine, since you've lost, then tell me, what is the name of this bird? Why can it replace the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm? Xiaohua pointed. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, Fu Jiwen actually shook his head and said, I know very little about the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and I don't know what this flying beast is. If I'm not wrong, then this beast should be a great sage of the thousand demons' sacred realm. Only a great sage can represent the thousand demons' sacred realm. Alright, then what is a great sage? Saints are supreme beings. Fujiwen explains, our hidden immortal continent saints are supreme beings in the human realm. The great sage of the thousand demons' sacred realm is the title of the most powerful demon. Xiaohua was naturally not satisfied with this kind of answer. He waved his hand and said, if you don't know, then you don't know. It seems like you really don't know. It's not just me who doesn't know. Fujiwen said with a smile, the thousand demons' sacred realm is a place where thousands of demons gather. If we humans go there, we'll be their food. In my hidden immortal continent, other than the great grandmaster and above seniors who have the qualifications to explore the thousand demons' sacred realm, no one else has ever been there. If fellow Xiao asks 100 people, it's already not bad if one person can answer clearly. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. Xiaohua smiled faintly, you better reveal the mystery of the top 10 imperial equipment. I'm looking forward to it. I wonder what the number 1 imperial equipment will be. What can it be? Fujiwen smiled mysteriously and said, fellow Xiao has never practiced martial arts before, so I'm afraid you don't know what it means to practice the blade for 100 days, practice the spear for 1,000 days, practice the sword for 10,000 days, right? Xiaohua was startled and asked curiously, could it be that young Master Fu has practiced martial arts before? Of course. Fujiwen said proudly, hidden immortal continent's Confucian scholars all have to practice the 6 arts. Martial arts, sword arts, and so on are all things that must be learned. I understand. Xiaohua nodded, the top of the top 10 imperial equipment is the sword. Right. Fujiwen said with a smile, the sword is an ancient sacred item, the most revered and noble, worshipped by humans and gods. It's the ancestor of short weapons, a weapon for close combat. With its profound Dao skills, it became a legend. In fact, because it's light and convenient to carry, it's beautiful to wear, and it's quick to use, the hidden immortal continent's various dynasties, princes, emperors, marquises, scholars, swordsmen, merchants, and commoners, all of them take pride in it. Since ancient times, the sword and its skills have been unhindered in the battlefield, dominating the martial arts world, establishing a country, and upholding justice. Thus, it has been passed down to this day, and is still loved by the people of the world. With its glorious history, it's deeply rooted in people's hearts, and can be passed down without decline. The top of the top 10 imperial equipment is precisely the tender-like-water sword. Tender-like-water. Sword. Xiaohua seemed to have understood something. Since ancient times, the most difficult thing to erase is the grace of a beauty. The sorrow of a beauty's feelings is like flowing water, if it can't be cut off, it will be chaotic. This tender-like-water sword is truly outstanding. That's right. This tender-like-water sword is like its name, a soft sword. The entire sword is transparent like water. When placed in water, it's the same as water. The sword's body is warm. After this sword is cut off, it can automatically fuse back together. Just like feelings. It can't be truly cut off. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiaohua said thoughtfully, if it's only like this, how can it be the number 1 imperial equipment? The sharpest thing in this world is tenderness, and the most hurtful thing in this aristocratic family is also tenderness. This tender-like-water sword can open the heavens with water droplets. When Fujiwen talked about tenderness, his eyes unexpectedly also showed tenderness. As long as there are still feelings in their hearts, they can't escape the attack of this tender-like-water sword. It's said that in the past, the hidden immortal continent's pear blossom fairy was injured and abandoned by the nobles of the immortal palace. In a rage, she held the tender-like-water sword and killed her way to the immortal palace. In front of the southern heavenly gate, Her sword soared through the sky and annihilated tens of thousands of heavenly soldiers. When Empress Dowager led the immortal palace's Star River to kill the fairy's sword cut the Star River into two. Unfortunately, this tender-like water sword was broken by the starlight in the Star River and turned into a morning star that disappeared into the horizon. The Pear Blossom Fairy even charged into the Star River with hatred, and her body and soul were destroyed. From then on, no matter what imperial equipment was born, it would be difficult for it to surpass. This tender-like water sword has always been listed as the #1 imperial equipment. Xiaohua sighed, this is another sad but beautiful story. I wonder if this story is the #1 imperial equipment story. Or is it tender-like water sword that is the #1 imperial equipment? What's the difference? Fu Jiwen laughed, the things you can't get are always the best. The faintly discernible legends are always the most beautiful. The memories in a person's heart are always the most profound. Strange, hearing this, Xiaohua suddenly thought of his own wishful staff and immediately interrupted, the ancestor of short weapons, the staff is also the #1 weapon. Why isn't there a staff in the top 10 imperial equipment? Staff. Fu Jiwen scratched his head and laughed, fellow Daoist Xiao must be joking. A staff, isn't it just a staff? How can it be in the top 10 imperial equipment? Forget it, I won't play the lute to a cow with you. Xiaohua casually waved his hand, but before he could continue, his expression changed and he hurriedly looked at the auction hall. In front of Yulin Feng, there was a jade slip. That's right, it was a jade slip commonly seen in the Dawn Rain continent. At this moment, it was floating in front of Yulin Feng. Yulin Feng said, fellow Taoists, this item is the jade I used by the ancient Taoists before they were destroyed by us Confucian cultivators. It should have been placed in the Daoist trifling item auction, but because this item was obtained from the Thousand Demons sacred realm, it wasn't taken out until now. This item's inspection method is different from the jade eye. After Zhai Xing Lu obtained it, we searched through the ancient records and found out that this item was called a jade slip. After that, Zhai Xing Lu specially found a Daoist expert and used their unique divine sense to inspect it. Only then did we find out that it was a 5 elements escape technique. Oh, to be more specific, it should be a commonly seen high-level escape technique in the hidden immortal continent called the water avoidance technique. This item is really rare. At least, I've never heard of it before. According to the person who inspected it, after practicing this escape technique, one can borrow the water of heaven and earth's spiritual energy to fly. It's even more powerful than us using the water avoidance technique to travel in the Jianghu. When the Daoist sect was flourishing, it must have been extremely precious. However, now that the Daoist sect has declined, according to that person, there isn't even a person who can use the elementary water escape technique. How could there be someone who needs this higher-level escape technique? Even when Zhai Xing Lu saw that this item was of little value and wanted to sell it to that person bitterly smiled and refused. Thus, Zhai Xing Lu could only bring it here to bid. It's a bit strange. Although Xiaohua was excited, he had already calmed down. He pinched his chin and said curiously, why did this guy say such a secret so clearly? Isn't he afraid that no one will bid? Ha! Fu Jiwen at the side laughed and said, this is the 3rd time I've heard this. This whatever jade slip is the same as the amplifying thunderwood that I want, no one will bid for it. If not for it being more rare than the amplifying thunderwood and having a higher base price, this guy would have already taken it out when the bidding started. What's the base price of this item? Xiaohua hurriedly asked. 1 piece of top-grade primeval stone. Fu Jiwen was really familiar with it and said without hesitation. Xiaohua cursed loudly, damn it, this is indeed a rare item worth hoarding. This kind of broken jade slip is actually sold for 1 piece of top-grade primeval stone. Yes, this item is just like the golden core cultivation method. In some people's eyes, this item is trash. But in the eyes of others, this item is a peerless treasure. Zhai Xinglu fancied this point and would rather smash it in their hands than lower the price. The base price of this jade slip is 50 top-grade primeval stones. Without waiting for Fu Jiwen to finish speaking, Yu Linfeng cut the base price of the jade slip in half. Damn it, Fu Jiwen immediately jumped up. This young master has waited for this auction 3 times, and that amplifying thunder would didn't even lower the price of a single primeval stone. How can this jade slip be lowered just like that? This is too unfair. Chapter 3287. Hee, it's not unfair. It's your bad character. Xiao Hua smiled and raised his hand. I bid 51 high-grade source stones. Fellow Xiao. Fu Jiwen hurriedly shouted, you bid too early, others can see that you're determined to get it. That's right. Since I'm determined to get it, then I naturally have to let others know. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked at the opposite side, where Duanmu young master was. 52 high-grade source stones. Sure enough, Duanmu young master's voice leisurely came. Xiao Hua confidently said, 53. Fu Jiwen naturally understood Xiao Hua's meaning. This Duanmu young master was probably the biggest obstacle to Xiao Hua bidding for this jade slip, or even the only obstacle. No matter when Xiao Hua opened his mouth, Duanmu young master would definitely return the favor from last time. Since that was the case, why didn't Xiao Hua open his mouth earlier? What a pity. Fu Jiwen stomped his feet. Fellow Xiao, I'm afraid there are even better things later. You let him return it too early. Not early, not early. Xiao Hua also leisurely said, I've benefited a lot from this auction, this item will be the last item to bid. I won't be able to use any of the items in the future. Besides, even if there are more in the future, I'll just continue to bid, who would be afraid of them? Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua thought, Duanmu young master only bid once and didn't say anything else. It seemed to be to return Xiao Hua's favor. And somewhere in Bright Moon Palace, Zhu Qing, who had been watching the entire auction with a sullen face, sighed again, such a good favor, why, let it go so easily. Could it be that Xiao Hua really needs this jade slip? And his strength is so strong that he's not afraid of the Duanmu family. Okay, this senior bids 53 high-grade source stones. Yu Linfeng saw that the useless jade slip was finally sold as he wished, and couldn't help but be overjoyed. He clapped his hands and said, if no one bids, this item will be this senior's. 55 high-grade source stones. Just as Xiao Hua was about to call out Xiao Yi with a smile, another voice came from downstairs. Xiao Hua's face turned cold. Looking up, it was the person who bid for the golden core cultivation method. Are you crazy? Without waiting for Xiao Hua to open his mouth, Fu Jiwen scolded in sympathy. Fellow Daoist Xiao has already helped him bid for a gold core cultivation method. How can he repay kindness with enmity? Or perhaps, his identity as a cultivator of the Dao sect has already been exposed, so he can't add insult to injury. Young Master Fu, you're using the wrong words to make things worse. You should be trying to create new problems. Xiao Hua said coldly. That's right, that's right. Fu Jiwen chuckled. After chatting with Xiao Hua for so long, Fu Jiwen felt like they were old friends at first sight. Unconsciously, he had already regarded Xiao Hua as an old friend. He won't be bidding again soon. Xiao Hua said indifferently. He raised his hand and said, 56 high-grade primordial stones. Immediately after, he muttered, could it be that this guy is blaming me for not helping him bid for the golden core cultivation method? Or do you think that I'm making fun of you? No matter what, you made me spend 2 high-grade primordial stones for nothing. Good, this fellow Daoist has increased the price. Fellow Daoist downstairs, are you going to increase the price? Yu Linfeng appeared excited again. as if every increase in price could excite him. Ah! Just as Yulin Feng was anticipating the increase in price, below the balcony, the cultivator who had just bid screamed for no reason, and then resisted the urge to say anything else. Fellow Daoist Xiao. Fu Jiwen's eyes darted around, looking at Xiao Hua as he said in a low voice. Using virtue to convince people, using virtue to convince people. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously. I've always advocated using virtue to convince people. Fellow Daoist, are you going to increase the price? Yulin Feng was rather surprised, but he didn't have any other thoughts. After all, the Bright Moon Palace was surrounded by many experts from Star Plucking Tower, and they weren't afraid of others causing trouble. Since no one shouted to stop, it couldn't have been done by that mysterious senior upstairs. The Daoist cultivator who instigated the internal strife naturally wouldn't bid, and even the meddlesome people in the surroundings didn't dare to make a sound. Young Master Duanmu was even more bewildered as he looked at the similarly illusory window in front of him, thinking about something unknown. Good. Yulin Feng's anticipated climax didn't come, and he could only somewhat dejectedly point his finger, and the jade slip slowly flew towards Xiao Hua's window. Seeing the jade slip fly towards him, Xiao Hua had the urge to use heaven and earth in the sleeve, as if only by holding this item in his hand would his heart be at ease. Of course, Xiao Hua's current magic power wasn't enough to support heaven and earth in the sleeve, and the current Xiao Hua didn't seem to be as impetuous as he was back in the Dawn Rain continent. He only looked, indifferently looked, and his eyes didn't move from the jade slip at all, as if he already had a card up his sleeve, and wasn't afraid of anyone coming to snatch it from him. It was as if he was completely certain that even if this jade slip was snatched away by someone, he would still be able to take it back. Unknowingly, Xiao Hua, who seemed to be a young lad, had already begun to transform, whether it was his temperament or bearing. Perhaps it was because of time, or perhaps it was because of a great change. In short, at this moment, Xiao Hua, who hadn't recovered much magic power, and whose divine abilities weren't even 30% of his peak, actually had a confidence he never had before. Xiao Yi. Xiao Hua took the jade slip and said, "Should this old man hand over the origin stones to you now?" Xiao Yi answered and entered, then hastily waved her hand and said, reporting to Senior, "As long as there's a bid below a supreme-grade origin stone, Senior doesn't need to immediately hand over the origin stones. This is a kind of treatment for distinguished guests. No need." Xiao Hua stretched out his hand, took out a supreme-grade origin stone, and handed it to Xiao Yi, saying, "This kind of treatment doesn't have any practical meaning. Senior, you'll soon know the treatment for distinguished guests." Xiao Yi took the origin stone, pursed her lips, and smiled, then lowered her head and left. What kind of treatment do distinguished guests have? Xiao Hua used his divine sense to enter the jade slip, carefully probing it, and asked Fu Jiwen again. Fu Jiwen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He spread out his hands and said, "Fellow Daoist, I'm just joking. This is the first time I've entered a distinguished guest's room. How could I know the treatment for distinguished guests?" However, after thinking for a moment, he probed again. If it's the most obvious treatment, it might be when bidding for the last few treasures. After a certain price, the cultivators downstairs aren't allowed to bid. They're probably afraid that they can't afford the origin stones, so they're blindly shouting there. Xiao Hua answered indifferently. Fu Jiwen couldn't clearly see Xiao Hua's appearance in the stardust, but he also understood that Xiao Hua was probing the water escape technique. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Hua put the jade slip into the space, and handed it over to the green-robed Xiao Hua to comprehend. At this moment, Xiao Hua was really happy. Although this water escape technique wasn't a high-grade water escape technique like Yulin Feng said, it was still a mid-grade water escape technique. After fusing with the water, it was an escape technique that relied on the water energy of heaven and earth to fly. In other words, as long as it was a place with water energy of heaven and earth, one could use this escape technique to fly. It wasn't like before where there was real water to be able to escape. As for the water avoidance technique from the West Sea, Xiaohua had already finished comprehending it with the Buddha's Saraira. That technique was very strange and required the so-called origin energy to be used. However, Xiaohua didn't know what origin energy was, so he couldn't test it out. Xiaohua closed his eyes for a moment and pondered a little. He knew that although these two water escape techniques weren't of the same origin, the realms of the escape techniques were connected. If he finished cultivating the water avoidance technique, he could naturally continue to cultivate the mid-grade water escape technique. Oh, right, isn't there someone in front of us who knows about origin energy? It's a waste not to ask. Xiaohua glanced at Fujiwen, who was also silently looking at the auction, and came to a realization. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Young Master Fu, I still have a question to ask. Fellow Taoist Xiao, why are you so polite? Please ask." Fujiwen hurriedly moved his gaze away from the window and said with a smile. Xiaohua said, "I would like to ask, what is origin energy? Is it the magic power of Confucian cultivators?" "Yes." Fujiwen said curiously, "Taoism is magic power, Buddhism is psychokinesis, Confucian cultivators are naturally origin energy. But why do some demons' cultivation techniques also mention origin energy?" Xiaohua asked curiously, "This is what I don't understand." "Oh, I understand." Fujiwen said with a smile, "Does fellow Taoist know about the 9 grades of origin energy and the 27th rank?" "I naturally know about this." Xiaohua nodded. "Then it's easy to explain." Fujiwen explained, because the 3 continents have magic power, psychokinesis, and origin energy. "Oh, I'm not very clear about the 1,000 demons sacred realm, this kind of classification is too heterogeneous. However, some cultivation techniques can be used regardless of magic power, psychokinesis, or origin energy. Therefore, Confucian cultivators use origin energy to refer to all magic power, psychokinesis, and origin energy. So it's like that." Xiaohua nodded and said, "These Confucian cultivators are really tyrannical. Origin energy is 9 grades, the substitution of origin energy is convenient for them. It can't be helped." "Who asked the hidden immortal continent to have the most Confucian cultivators?" Fujiwen smiled, then pointed outside the window and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, didn't you just say that you want to look for flying equipment? Now they have already started to bid for flying demonic beasts, why don't you take a look?" "Okay." Xiaohua responded and looked outside the window. However, he was ecstatic in his heart. Since magic power can be used as origin energy, then when his magic power is fully recovered, he can naturally use the water escape technique. In other words, he can already use the complete 5 elements escape technique. His light escape technique cultivation has indeed taken a solid step. At this moment, in front of Yulin Feng, there is a row of over 10 eggs of different sizes, which are also emitting different kinds of bewitching brilliance. The shape of these eggs is as strange as the halo. Some are oval, some are flat, some are gourd-shaped, and there are even some that are long. There are even some eggs that are faintly flickering, as if these eggs are lightly breathing. These are demonic beast eggs. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and asked Fujiwen in a low voice, "You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."